Welcome back to Track Talk. Today we'll be doing a game of 1817. It's been a while since we've done this title. It's just a lot of work and a lot of mental effort to comment these games, so I've been avoiding it. But I figure it's been long enough and we're due for another episode. So we will be jumping right through the auction. We've kind of talked about this in the past, and there's just not a whole lot for me to comment in the 1817 auction. So we're going to skip it and just see what the end result is here. Looks like Joe has ended up with a massive amount of privates, and he only has $15 cash. So that is a very high risk start here in the sense that his companies are going to be very cash poor, going to have to take a bunch of loans. Um, he does have Pittsburgh, which is, probably the most impactful private in the game. So we'll see how he's able to take advantage of that. And he has a lot of nice special abilities in terms of coal and mountains. To really build up track for the Pittsburgh company. So I think we'll see a strong Pittsburgh tile, so to speak, in this game. But I do worry about Joe's prospects here if he's going to be able to afford his two trains and then somehow still have money to pay off his loans. So we'll see how that works out for him. Tom, much more uh, medium, I guess, middle of the road approach here, has two privates, both of them male, so wide open in terms of which companies he can float. Doesn't have, you know, the obligation or the opportunity to take advantage of those mountains like Joe does. Huck, a few more privates for him than for Tom. He has the bridge, coal, and the train station. Train station is important, maybe the second most valuable private in my opinion, just for that early token in Pittsburgh potentially, or somewhere else. You can just secure a nice early game run for yourself. And then Becky is the opposite of Joe, has absolutely no privates, so has lost out on the opportunity to kind of multiply her cash and take advantage of the free cash that the game is providing in the seed money, but has a very flexible start. We'll probably see them start three companies pretty low and develop map control that way. So actually a pretty extreme auction. Maybe we shouldn't have skipped it, but enough said for now. We'll jump right into stock round one. And Joe is going to be leading us off. He is putting the Bess up, and that will be in Pittsburgh. So no beating around the bush. We're immediately jumping to the Pittsburgh company, and we'll see if anybody wants to contest this. We have not seen too many players have success with stealing Pittsburgh from the Pittsburgh private player on the stream. It is a little bit dangerous. It just tends to make the entire map a little bit worse, a little bit tighter in terms of money and runs to do that. So we may see him get this for 130. Tom is going to 135, Huck passing, Becky passing, and Joe goes to 140, which is enough to secure it. So we will see a Pittsburgh company paired with the private in this game, it looks like. Now, as mentioned, this player has basically no cash to capitalize his companies, so the Pittsburgh company is going to be quite poor. He's going to have to use his privates to fund his flotation, but he may be able to make that work for him and just take some loans. We'll have to see. So Pittsburgh starting with $10, and we are on to the next company, Tom. He has taken the PLE, which is going to be in Baltimore. Baltimore is not a location on the map that would take advantage of mountains and rivers, so a good start for someone with two mail contracts, for instance. Huck passing, Becky passing, Joe is also passing, so Tom has gotten the PLE for 150 and is going to be parring it at 70. And he also doesn't have that much cash, so he's going to have a pretty poor PLE. We'll have to rely on loans to afford his trains. We're on to Huck now, and Huck is going to be taking the Charleston tile. I suppose that should have been predictable when you see someone with the bridge and a bunch of coal. Charleston's a nice spot. He also has the train station, so if he wants to cooperate with Pittsburgh Tile, He may be able to snap a quick token down in Pittsburgh and then run through Charleston into Atlanta, which is always pretty nice, especially if he lays a bunch of coal on these mountains. That's a pretty good run in green. We'll see if that works out for him. Even with the train station, no guarantee that operating order is correct for him to take advantage of it, of course. So he wins that for 140. Some pretty high pars for all these companies. I am more used to seeing people parring around this 55 number, but so far nobody has gone below 70. That may reduce the number of companies that we see start. So Charleston Company does end up with a bridge and some coal, pretty standard stuff. Does not actually end up with train station, which I guess makes sense. You can only put so many privates into a single company. So we'll see another company with the train station and potentially rushing towards Pittsburgh. This leaves Becky to Para Company, and she's gonna do the A&A on Albany. Albany is an interesting choice. Not the most contested location necessarily. Usually would see someone on New York, potentially Philadelphia or Cleveland before Albany, but that's what she's chosen. We'll see if anybody wants to overbid her. She put it just at 100, so won't be able to take max loans, but this is the player that has all this cash, so won't necessarily need loans to buy their trains. Joe's passing. Tom overbids and bids a ton, 190. That's his entire remaining bid power for a token in Albany. That is difficult for me to explain. Doesn't synergize all that well with the Baltimore token either. He will be bracketing New York for the late game with these tokens, but boy, that's a really high bid. I half wonder if that's a misclick. I think this was played asynchronously. It looks like it was, so that's a hard one for me to explain. I don't imagine anybody will be overbidding that, and he does secure it at the bid of 190. So he has no more bid power and is out of the auction. Back to Joe, the Pittsburgh player, and he is putting up the Rutland. Takes the Philadelphia spot. Philadelphia, nice synergy with Pittsburgh. A lot of mountain tiles that you can lay coal on. And also, by securing these two tokens, we'll be getting access to New York guaranteed in the late game. Won't be able to run through it until the late game, but we'll at least be able to run to it. So nice synergy there. We'll see if he's able to end up with that or if anybody overbids him. Huck passing. Becky is passing, so he gets that for just 120. We're starting to see a more reasonable par price. This $90 par is crazy. So Joe in pretty good shape so far. Still worried about his lack of cash in his companies, but as long as he manages his loans appropriately, we'll probably be okay. He has put the Pittsburgh private into the Philadelphia company, so he's going to be basically laying the tile for his Pittsburgh company so that the Pittsburgh company actually gets 2 fresh tiles and is able to take advantage of all the coal. His operating order is not going to be quite right for this, though. He needs to be careful that the Rutland operates before the Bess in order to make that work. So that may be a kind of sticking point for him. He can adjust operating order still by taking loans, but we'll see if he remembers to do that or not. Otherwise, the Bess is going to be forced to lay Pittsburgh without the Pittsburgh private in order to lay any track at all, which is really suboptimal. So I think he'll be able to navigate that, but something to watch out for. Tom is out because he massively overbid on the A&A. Huck is putting up the belt, and that is going in Cleveland. So the first Cleveland company is now up, and looks like that is going to be uncontested. So Huck will get that for 90. Another very expensive par. These players are parring companies much higher than I'm used to seeing. Maybe the meta that I'm used to is different than what they are used to. So the Cleveland company looks like they will be ending up with the train station and also has some coal, coal in Cleveland is a little bit underwhelming, but the train station is a potential threat to the Pittsburgh tile. So we were kind of expecting Charleston to get that, but it looks like the same player has, left himself that opportunity. And two players are now out of bid auction, so Becky may have her choice of starting locations moving forward. She does have to worry about Joe competing a little bit, but she can overbid him fairly easily. So should have her pick of the litter, so to speak. She is putting the Boston and Albany down and is only putting it at 100. So unless she's overbid, is not going to be able to take two loans. But again, with the amount of cash she has, I guess she's not worried about it. Puts it in Cleveland. That's the second Cleveland tile taken. And does anybody overbid here? Looks like Joe is bidding the max, really wants that Cleveland tile. And Cleveland for him would be quite good. He would have Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Cleveland. Those are three token locations that he can maintain throughout the game for very good late game runs. New York to Chicago is basically a give me with those three token locations, depending on how he merges them together. So he's going to go to the max that he can afford for that token. And looks like Becky lets him have it. All right. So Becky's the only one left in the auction and is able to just pick and choose where she wants to go now. Still good locations left. Both New York tiles left. And Cincinnati, not terrible, especially if Charleston's floating and Cleveland is willing to cooperate. Macy's a bunch of New York action, and then Scranton, Boston, Cincinnati. We'll see. She has full power over where she ends up, and all of her companies can be started at 105, or I should say she can bid 105 for all of her companies. She doesn't need the 110 to take two loans. Starting at DLNW and starts it on Indianapolis. That is not one of the locations that I had highlighted. Indianapolis with two trains does have decent revenue into the offboards, but I think you can have better revenue than that at some of the other locations. I mean, just running into New York is $60 in yellow, and this is only 50. So I don't know, a little bit underwhelmed by that decision. This is the danger that you face when you pass throughout the auction like this, is that yes, you're uncontested, but you've lost out on all the good locations. Regardless, first company is going in Indianapolis. Everybody else has to pass. Second company is going in Buffalo. Ooh, Buffalo is also kind of in the middle of nowhere. I don't know about these decisions. I'm surprised that nobody is focusing on New York at all. Those tiles are usually much more valued than these players are showing. Looks like there is some action here. So Bess is taking loans, and I think this is what we were talking about before. Bess is wanting to operate behind Rutland and needs to take the loans now to make that happen. So probably we'll see another loan here, is what we see. And now he's set up for the Rutland to lay the home tile for the Bess. And he doesn't even have to lose priority for this, because I assume he's expecting Becky to float a third company here, which is a pretty safe assumption. I think he could have done this earlier. So maybe a little bit risky to let her float two of her companies and then do this. There's always the chance that she passes. I don't think there's a high chance of that, but it would have been safer to do this earlier. Maybe he'd forgotten. Tom and Huck passing. Becky, third company is the GT, and that goes on New York. So we do see one New York company come out. Very surprised we only saw one, especially with the, what was it, Rochester or Buffalo? Yeah, I don't know about that. It's an underwhelming start location. Regardless, everybody has secured their companies. Two players with 3, two players with 2, and we are into operating round 1. The ANA in Albany is up first, and expect they'll be laying track down to New York. They may lay track to Canada, but it's going to cost them 20 bucks to do it. So probably makes sense just to wait until the next operating round. No real rush. Um, Sorry, I was forgetting. They have to lay their home tile, so they're definitely going to be not laying towards Canada and New York. They'll have to pick one at most. So they do pay the 20 for the extra track lay, and probably will buy two trains with a loan here. We'll have 2 routes, so no sense in forgoing that unless they want to angle for a 2+ train, which would be reasonable, but will cost them a little bit of revenue in OR 1.2. So it does take the loan and does buy 2 trains. Okay, we'll have higher revenue as a result, but kind of running the risk of missing out on the 2+ trains. Belt is up out of Cleveland. This player, I believe, also has the Charleston. So instead of heading towards Pittsburgh, may see him head down south to Charleston. He has coal, but no real way to take advantage of it for now. Okay, so a little bit ambiguous in terms of where he's ultimately heading. Could see him head down to Charleston, but could also be heading over to Indianapolis or Cincinnati. We'll have to see. He's taking loans and will buy a single 2 train. Oh, he's just doing it out of order. He does end up with 2 trains. No guarantee that he has 2 runs. The reason I suspect, or I don't suspect, but I suggest that he may be heading towards Cincinnati is because he does have that train station. So could drop a quick token there. I think that would be kind of a weak play. But he's also a little bit dependent on what the B&A does, whether or not he gets any track towards Pittsburgh at this point. PLE in Baltimore, double A's, so that's a pretty expensive start to the game for the PLE. $40 in the first operating round. We'll have to take a loan for his train. Can take 2 loans for 2 trains if he wants, but no guarantee he has 2 runs. He's going to stay with just a single 2 train for now. The A&S in Charleston is laying the bridge, and an interesting orientation of Charleston here. We'll often see it lay towards this mountain here and head up to Pittsburgh with coal, but doesn't look like he's interested in giving the Bess a easy run down into the south. More likely to be cooperating with his other company in Cleveland. So I think we can expect Cleveland to head down to Charleston and not Cincinnati. Lang hit one of his coals, may see the second one end up in the mountain next to Atlanta, and should have pretty good runs in the A&S in OR 1.2. Expect we'll see 2 trains come out here. And we do. The Rutland in Philadelphia, probably laying Pittsburgh, almost certainly laying Pittsburgh, and then may start laying track in that direction just to synergize with his other company. We'll see. So it does lay Pittsburgh, no surprises there. And does lay a second track, so does that prevent him from buying 2 trains? Looks like it. I don't think he would have had the money for it either way with the interest. So going to be content with a single 2 train, it looks like, and 2 loans. B&A, this is Joe's third company, so he's got 3 right in a row here. And I anticipate him heading towards Pittsburgh since he probably wants to lay as much track for Pittsburgh early in the game as possible. He does head towards Pittsburgh, but doesn't have the money to pay that terrain cost just yet, and we'll have to take some loans, sitting on just a single 2 train for now. The Bess has $200 cash, already took its loans in the stock round, and does have mountain engineers, so can head towards Philadelphia, no trouble, but it will be hard for it to head towards Cleveland. Could also start heading down towards Charleston, but with Charleston indicating it's not interested in cooperating, I don't know that he necessarily needs to lay that track this early. May want to just double lay towards Philadelphia and drop coal. So does actually neglects to drop any coal Oh, I see. Couldn't drop coal there because it's not next to a city. So we'll have to save its coal next to Philadelphia and then potentially a coal here just southwest of Pittsburgh. And I think he wants two trains here. Um, the the Pittsburgh track is quite lucrative in green. Does buy two trains, has no loan space available for a 2+ train, but is operating far enough back that probably not going to be seeing that happen anyways unless he were to merge this company. GT, the sole New York company, no track for him in yellow, just going to be buying a 2 train and actually taking 2 loans. So going to be buying a bunch of 2 trains, it looks like. That's interesting. Definitely not going to have track for that in the next operating round, and may see them buy these trains across. I think that's what we'll see. DLW can't afford 3 trains if they, can only afford 2 trains because of the interest, and is not going to double A, not yet. Does indicate that they're going to Chicago and St. Louis. Will have good revenue in green, kind of underwhelming in yellow. Does she buy 2 trains? She does. J, up in Buffalo, not a whole lot of options for this company. Don't usually see Buffalo as a starting location for this reason. Gonna head towards the DIT, which has the same value as a city basically. And just the single track lay for now. Buys the 2 train. We'll have to take a loan for interest, and buys a second train as well. So we are into our first mergers and acquisitions, just looking at these companies for a minute. Becky has 5 2 trains. Did end up buying trains across out of the GT, which is going to have the single run out of New York. It has a good amount of cash on the GT, so we'll be able to afford a 2+ if there's one available. Unfortunately, running quite late, so unless she merges, which is an option for her, may see her miss out on the 2+s and will not have enough for the 3 either. Usually these 3s are exported, and that's how we see green break, though. I shouldn't say usually, often we see that. Looking at the other players, Huck in Cleveland and Charleston, 2 trains in both companies, max loans, so going to have to take advantage of some of these financial mechanisms if he wants another train in the next operating round. Tom, A&A and PLE. PLE, I believe, is in Baltimore. I forget where the A&A is. That is in Albany. Okay, so 2 trains in the A&A. We'll be running that up to New York and into Canada. PLE just with the 1 train for now, but we'll have good revenue into New York. And then finally, Joe, probably too early to say in this game, but has a fairly strong start here in terms of map position. Does have a lot of loans to contend with, but depending on how his revenue is in this next stock round, may be able to overcome that early deficit in terms of high loan burden. The one thing I'll point out for him is that his companies probably want to run a little bit later. They will miss out on the 2+s if they do that, but he really wants Pittsburgh to be green by the time this BESS runs. That will massively increase his revenue. So he may be willing to run the risk of falling out of 2+ contention in order to make that happen. It's also possible that we could see him merge the 2 companies bracketing Pittsburgh, and then hope to secure one of those token spots with the BESS if he were to grow up this company for an extra token. So I don't know. He has a lot of options. We'll see what he decides to do. Into the merger and acquisition, A&A is up. Don't expect we'll be seeing a whole lot from this player. He's operating early. He has loan space from both of his companies for a 2+ if he wants it. I don't think he really needs to change the status quo. A&A is passing. Belt. This player, on the other hand, really needs to merge or convert in order to get a 2+ if he wants it. So maybe some action from him. Nothing so far. Pretty quiet merger and acquisition. And looks like nobody did anything. Okay, so everybody was happy with the status quo. ANA almost certainly heading towards Canada here, does, and is going to have nice revenue. Running for 100 and has the ability to pay its loans, so it doesn't even need to half pay, can full pay if he wants, which he does, gets 100% of that revenue, and could take a loan even here, but actually cannot take a loan because the interest due is going to prevent him from buying the 2+, so may just want to sit on a single loan here. The belt, $75 can link up with Pittsburgh, but maybe more interested in heading down to Cleveland. Looks like he's only going to have one run no matter what he does here. That's a shame. Hate to buy the 2 train and then not have a run for it. So he does pay the cost to link up with Charleston and is going to run his 2 train for, looks like 60. So a little bit of a miscalculation from Huck. Bought a train that he didn't need, and depending on how things work out, may not get a run of this 2 at all. We'll see. Going to be hard for the 3s to all go away before he runs again, so I think he can feel pretty secure that he'll get at least 1 run out of his 2, but a little bit inefficient. Took loans he didn't need to. PLE, no access to green. Just the expensive track south of Baltimore. May want to just sit and not lay any track here, but does head towards Richmond. Doesn't need it for the run. Doesn't have cash for another track lay, so just preparing for the later portion of the game. He's going to be running for 70, it looks like, and he does not have the cash for a 2+ either. Nobody wanted to convert or merge, so these 2+s are sitting on the shelves. Nobody's in a rush to get them. That said, he does half pay and is able to end up with 1. Okay, I spoke too soon. ANS is up and still no green, so can use his privates to head down to Atlanta, and he will have a nice revenue. May even end up with a 2+ if he full withholds, or yeah, I think he would have to full withhold here. So 140 in revenue, and he half pays, which is going to be enough for his interest, but not a 2+ train. Does have good runs in the next OR setup for him. Bess, probably a little bit upset here that he did not break into green, but really didn't do anything to make it happen, so can't be too upset. And unfortunately for him, he's in a similar situation to the belt. Bought 2 trains, but only going to be able to run 1 of them because he doesn't have the cash to lay the river tile here. This is really bad news for the Pittsburgh player. You really want this company to start hot, and this is a very slow start. Going to be able to hit 2 coal tiles, but Pittsburgh in yellow is so much worse than Pittsburgh in green, and the fact that he can only run 1 train here is devastating. So really not a great start for Joe. Running a single 2 train for 70, pretty good revenue at least, but could be so much better. He half pays for his interest and is unable to buy a share or pay off a loan or buy a train. B&A does have loan space. See if he wants to link up with Pittsburgh. That's his other company, so he's probably motivated to do it, even though the other players will also benefit from this. Does need to be careful that he doesn't lose out on a token that he just opened up for the Cleveland player by laying that track. He didn't really need that he didn't need that track for the B&A to run his 2 train either, so he may come to regret that decision. He could have merged the B&A and the Rutland together, have them operate before the Bess, and lay that track for the Bess. I don't know. I think he had a lot of options and didn't take advantage of any of them, and is paying the price here. He runs for 60 and full withholds, will pay his interest, it looks like, and is also going to pick up a 2+. Okay. The R, no loan space for him. And we'll see. He could, in theory, head northeast. He's heading towards Scranton. Surprised he's not heading towards New York. Does have money for that track if he wants it, but I don't think it's really worth laying it right now. It's going to cost him 35, so he defers for now and could withhold for a 2+ here. So he half pays, and that's not going to be enough for the 2+. Covers his interest though. This is interesting. We may see a 2+ export here instead of a 3. There's 2 left. Nobody's been prioritizing these. GT can buy one though. No track for them. Just going to run for 70. Half pays and buys the 2+. DL&W does have the ability to double lay here. Probably needs to have revenue worthwhile, but is going to, well, we'll have loan space for a 2+, so maybe we'll see the 3 export. Half pays and could take a loan for the 2+ here. Is going to defer. Okay. If she didn't buy it with the DL&W, she may not buy it with the J either. That's interesting. I don't often see 2+s export. That seems bad for the table. Someone was motivated to buy that, I think. J lays a double loop into Toronto. It's going to be running for just 80. And half pays for the interest, it looks like. 2+ exports, that is interesting. I haven't seen that too often. And we're into the next M&A round. So let's look at the players again. We have Tom leading us off, and he is in Albany and Baltimore. Does have a 2+ train. Does not have 2 runs for the Baltimore PLE just yet. Will need to lay, I believe, down into Richmond to secure that. So I think that's a safe bet in terms of expectations for the PLE. I don't know that he is in a position to merge these companies. Has a bunch of trains, a bunch of loans. I think he wants to keep things as they are. He's not really in a position to buy a 3 train. I suppose could grow up the A&A in Albany, but he has 100% of that revenue right now. Probably a mistake. Next player is Huck, and he is operating out of Cleveland and Charleston. He has a token available, so I don't know that he needs to, get additional tokens, or I guess alter his company structure in order to get a token. May want to operate a little bit earlier and open up loan space for the 3s. But again, I think going into the 3s, you actually want to operate late so you can take advantage of that green track. So he's also someone that may want to just sit on the status quo. Becky has a ton of trains, probably wants a slow game when you're running 6-2 trains. So don't imagine we'll see much on her end. And that leaves us with Joe. We talked about them merging companies last time. He may actually want to merge and take advantage of this excellent track that he's developed along the center of the map here. Yeah, I think he's most likely to merge, but I don't know that he necessarily has to. He has max loans right now, so that may be the more pressing issue of his. Then he may want to open up some more loan space by merging his companies. We will see. A&A is up and is passing. Belt converts, so that is the Cleveland company, I believe. And he is converting. That's a little bit surprising. I suppose he will be able to buy a 3 train with the extra loan space. And he probably will have runs for 3 trains. He will have to token in Charleston or Pittsburgh. But he's operating so early in operating order, there's no guarantee that anybody opens green up for him. And he needs green to open to run 3 trains. So a little bit surprised to see him doing this. We'll see if it plays out for him. It does give him the ability to buy another share in advance of the stock round, but he's also diluting his revenue giving other players the same opportunity. So not a strict benefit there. He does buy a share of the belt, gets a little more capital in the company that way. And let's see if anybody else joins him. Looks like everybody's passing that opportunity. We're on to the A&S, his other company. A&S is passing for now. Joe, let's see what he wants to do here. So he merges the BESS and the R. Okay. He has secured a decent run for his Pittsburgh company. Still surprised that he didn't head into New York. And by merging, he's going to be operating quite early in operating order. He's almost certainly going first. So the odds of him getting green Pittsburgh before he runs seems very low. Yeah, this is, I don't like this. I think if he's going to merge companies, he needed to merge his other two, shoot them up in operating order, bring out green early before BESS operates, and then take advantage of that nice track with the BESS. I guess the downside of doing that is that you're potentially giving away a token to the belt, but this seems strictly worse. Yeah, I don't see the logic here. He's got 3 trains in the BESS. He's going to be able to run them, but he's not going to be running them in green, so the revenue is going to be a lot lower than the other companies. He is neglecting to buy any shares in this company. It doesn't look like anybody else is interested either, so not even getting capital in the company. PLE converts, probably opening up loan space for his 3 trains. PLE is in Baltimore. Only has 2 routes, or will only have 2 routes, but maybe anticipating now that somebody has merged companies that green will be coming out early enough to give him access to green track and potentially more options for routes. He does buy a share, and Huck also buys a share, so this company is nicely capitalized now. Becky's passing, Joe's passing, and DL&W, we're onto Becky's companies now. Looks like she's passing, and GT, B&A is operating out of Cleveland, and Joe already merged his companies, so he doesn't have any options here. He could grow up the B&A, I guess, but I don't know that. We'll see that. He does. Okay. So Joe is very active in this merger and acquisition round. He has 3 trains in one company, 2 trains in the other, and a good amount of loan space. We'll see if he buys one of his B&A shares here. He does, so he will have no cash into the stock round, but I guess that's almost to his benefit in the sense that very likely to be leaving early in priority. Looks like nobody else is buying his shares, and we're into acquisitions. In theory, could see an acquisition. I don't know that anybody's really set up for it. I'll let the players surprise us. I'm not going to try and analyze that. And nothing of note, so good time saving. Joe is up. He has spent all of his cash because he's already grown up his companies and merged them. This gives the other players shares to buy, whereas otherwise they may not have had opportunities to invest. But currently he has nothing to do. So he's passing Tom. He buys the B&A. Huck, no cash. So they are actually shorting. Ooh, okay. Shorting the BESS. There's no chance that these 2 trains are rusting before they operate. And even without green, we'll have some decent revenue here. Yeah, I don't know about this. This seems premature. I don't think that the BESS is in a tenuous enough position to justify shorts here. What's he going to do with this cash? So he only had $10. Wouldn't have been able to buy any shares at all without this short. But he needs to find a share that's worth more than what he's going to be paying for the BESS. And the problem is that the BESS is probably operating first. Even if he falls back to the short shares, he's still going to be operating ahead of the A&S. So, or the A&A. So Huck may very well find himself in a cash crisis because he's going to have to pay for the BESS's revenue here. Yeah, this is not good. This is risky. Buying the B&A. B&A, I just looked at where he was running and I already forgot. B&A is in Cleveland. Will have good revenue, but it's operating very late. So there's a chance that Huck has to sell this share in a cash crisis even before he gets to reap any benefit from it, and he's just capitalized Joe's company even more. Risky. I don't know. You don't see too many shorts in stock round two for good reason. Becky, she is floating a new company. This is not going to be enough to rust the twos. She floats at 120. I suppose people could bid for this, so not guaranteed that she ends up with it, but I don't think anybody's going to be dying to get this company. Puts it on New York, so that's the second New York company, and this is floated behind the BES, of course, so not going to be rusting any trains. Tom is also shorting the BES. Okay, so we got two players that think this is a good idea. I am sticking to my guns and saying this is a bad idea. Tom is buying the belt, and he would have had cash even without the short for a share. So kind of unnecessary. Huck, he is continuing to short the BES. Okay. In for a penny, in for a pound, it sounds like. And investment opportunities are rather limited. So all these shorts, is he even going to be able to use all the cash that he's getting from them? I don't think so. There's just not enough shares to buy. So this is really, really bad if he's not even able to use the cash. Huck is buying the PLE with his cash. Looks like there's one share left available to him, and Tom may very well hoover that up. So he just shorted for cash that he can't even spend, potentially. That seems bad. Becky's passing. Joe is taking loans to defend the BES and redeem these shares, I assume. Could have done this earlier, but it was hard to predict that the other players were going to short him even further. That's kind of unusual, so I can't blame him for that. He takes the loan but doesn't redeem any shares. That's interesting. Tom buys that last share that's available. So what is Huck going to do with all the cash that he just accumulated? He's shorting further. Again, nowhere to put this cash. Is he going to float another company? I suppose that's an option. One more short on the BES. Is Huck going for it? He does. Max shorts on the BES. And he has a ton of cash. I think you have to float a company now. Otherwise, what was the point? So he floats the Rutland and puts it in Detroit. Detroit, kind of an underwhelming location right here. Not set up to quickly link up with Cleveland. And this also means that almost certainly he's giving green to Pittsburgh, which is a big news for the company, really big deal for the company he's been shorting. He's going to really increase the revenue. Also, he's just tied up all his liquidity in very expensive Rutland shares. So when the BES operates, he's going to have to sell paying shares in order to cover his short shares. Yeah, I don't like this strategy. I think you're helping the BES, not hurting it here, putting a bunch of shares. Well, and that said, the BES has not redeemed any shares yet. So if he redeems and puts it in his treasury, then I think you're helping him. If he just leaves them in the market, it's equivocal. He's going to be falling back quite a bit, but I still don't see these two trains rusting. If he falls back enough, does that change any token opportunities? Not necessarily. I think we're still seeing Huck ending up with that Pittsburgh token. He's going to open green on the Rutland and then lay a green Pittsburgh and steal that token. So that may be his motivation for this, but I think the cost is too high. He's putting himself in a very dangerous position for a Pittsburgh token. Becky's passing. Everybody's passing. Huck is first up and heads over towards Toronto. That's underwhelming. And we'll be buying a 3, I assume. Does. And doesn't have to take any loans. Leaves himself $0. and buys a train from the belt. Again, these two trains are not going to be rusting, so he just denied himself a run on the belt for really no benefit. I don't see it. That two train would have run pretty well, especially now that Pittsburgh's green. That's a lot of money he just cost himself. A&A does have access to green tiles, probably upgrades his home, does, and is going to be running for 130. Has to cover his interest, so may see at least a half pay, potentially a full withhold if he wants to pay off his loan. He pays out, and does he take another loan here? I guess so. Okay. The belt does end up with the token in Pittsburgh as expected, and is able to lay coal towards Charleston. But again, you're not really hurting the Bess here. The Bess already has that token, and you're just upgrading his home, giving himself more runs. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. And you denied yourself one of the runs with your two train. That's questionable. Runs for 90 and withholds. So he doesn't even get the revenue that he's going to need when the Bess pays out. This is rough. I think he may be in a cash crisis in this operating round. He buys a 3, okay. Pays his interest. A&S is up, probably upgrading Charleston here. Does. So this is, again, putting the Bess in a great position for really monstrous runs. Going to be able to run 3 trains out of Pittsburgh, no problem. That's going to be a lot of revenue that Huck is on the hook for. A&S actually lays the track even, so pays the cost for Pittsburgh, and it's going to run for 190, which is nice revenue, but he has to cover loans too. So he half pays and should be able to pay off a loan here. He's going to switch some trains around. Doesn't pay off the loan. Didn't he have money to pay off the loan? He was a little bit short. Okay. Housatonic, newly floated company in New York, is upgrading away from Canada, and I suppose this is to help out the J, her other company. It's going to take a while for that to pay off. Buying a 3, but it's going to have to take some loans to do it. PLE was given a gift by Huck in terms of green track. Probably will see Richmond still laid though, just because he wants 2 runs. So does get the upgrade and is going to have really nice revenue now. Runs for 160 and has some loans, but actually doesn't need to worry about them. So could have pay to pay off a loan, but has enough for his interest, could just full pay here. Given that he only owns 60% of the company, may want to half pay. Could full withhold, and that would really hurt Huck. Which is exactly what happens. Oh wow, this is really bad news for Huck. He's going to be in a cash crisis for sure. He's had no revenue this entire operating round. Maybe that's not true. Maybe the AS paid out. He half paid. So yeah, he's only got $100 cash. He's going to have to sell shares shortly. That's rough. Buys the 3, pays his interest, and now we see the Bess. See how monstrous this run gets. Can even upgrade Philadelphia here. It's going to head to Baltimore instead. Oh man, this is going to be a ginormous run. It's a shame he doesn't have a token for Baltimore. That's the only way it could be better for him. Paying for 300. That's $120 to Huck. Or sorry, 240 to Huck. And as expected, he's in a cash crisis. So yeah, these shorts are really not paying off for him. He's got to sell 2 shares of his PLE, and the PLE withheld, so he didn't get any benefit at all from these shorts in terms of buying paying shares. That is really dangerous. That's why you don't do this. He actually has to sell a 3rd share too. That's brutal. DLNW will be running into Chicago and St. Louis. Can upgrade to Indy if he wants. Has pretty good revenue now that they're in green. And running for 140 and half pays. I guess they're going to just pay their interest. Can't really get a 3 train very easily. The J, I assume we're going to be seeing them head over to Albany out of Toronto. Actually just upgrading its home for a little bit better revenue in here. Runs for 120, half pays. It's going to cover their interest. B&A, pretty good runs in the B&A too. Has the token available. So key in token in Charleston and hit Pittsburgh twice, which is pretty nice. He's probably regretting a little bit that he wasn't able to snag the second Pittsburgh token, but you know, he's getting so much money out of the Pittsburgh company, I don't know that he's too upset. So laying track towards Chicago, it looks like. Does secure the token in Charleston and is running for 210 half pays, and looks like we may see him pay off a loan. Could also withhold, take a loan to buy a 3. We'll have nice runs for the 3 train in the next operating round. May see that. Yeah, so he buys the 3. He's going to have to address these loans at some point, but he's good for now. GT, running out of New York. Only 1 run available to it, even with the upgrade in New York. Doesn't have a token, so revenue is going to be a little bit lackluster. Running for 110 and half pays just for the interest. We're into the next mergers and acquisitions. We'll just look at the players' positions for a moment. So Huck is leading us off and has 3 trains in the A&S, just a single train in the Rutland. I think that's the newly floated company. Won't have very good runs there. Just going to be getting into Toronto, it looks like. So probably doesn't want to buy any trains into the Rutland. And does he want to merge anywhere? He would have to merge his A&S. I don't know that he wants to dilute his shares. He's going to have really good revenue there. So may just sit pretty here. Could in theory grow up one of his companies, but maybe just happy with the way things are. Looking at Tom here, he is in Baltimore and Albany. Baltimore is going to be a monster. Don't think we want him to dilute any of his shares, so probably no action for the PLE. The A&A would have to grow up in order to afford a 3 train. Could potentially see that, but maybe no motivation really to do that. Joe, he has a ton of loans in this Best company. He is going to have a monstrous revenue, though. Fortunately for him, he only owns 40% of it. I don't think we're going to see him doing anything there. Could, in theory, merge the Best and the B&A, but with so many trains, that would be kind of silly. So I don't imagine we'll see that. And Becky has 4 companies, full loans in 2 of the companies, and is just kind of spread all over the map. Kind of hard to predict what she's going to be doing. She's hovering right above acquisition. Actually is a tick above acquisition, so can't even withhold into the stock round, which I've seen some pretty good players do to protect their shares from being purchased by the other players. Yeah, I'm not really sure what we'll see from Becky here. She's got a lot of companies, so there's a lot of potential shenanigans. So far, everyone's passing. Looks like everybody's passing pretty easy acquisition or merger round. Any acquisitions? Don't imagine we'll see this. Yeah, so we're just into the operating round. Rutland's first up. Expect we'll be seeing him head towards Toronto. Runs for 60 and pays that out. No loans to worry about. Could take loans here just to reduce his stock price, but I guess really doesn't have the opportunity to buy a 3 train, so may just sit on the 2 train for now. A&A, probably laying towards New York and double tapping it will massively increase his revenue that way. Running for 180, does have a bunch of loans, so may have to half pay here. but actually full pays and just gonna tank the interest for now. ANS, 3 trains here. Does he want to start heading over to Chicago? Not going to be able to get there this operating round. Could, in theory, head to Indianapolis for another run. But that'll be worse than heading up to Cleveland. So, I don't know. Yeah, does link up with Indy. Doesn't have a token for it just yet. And is running, oh, I see, with the 3 train is able to run into Chicago. So that does make sense, actually. Running for 330, really nice revenue for him. But we're going to see in just a second, all that revenue that he just got is going to be ending up in Joe's pocket because he's got to pay the Bess shorts now. So Bess is getting a run into New York, potentially a little bit more cash for his 3 train there. And running for 440. That is, I think, the nightmare scenario for Huck here. Huck owes $350, and his AS revenue was only 330. So literally everything he just made out of the AS is going to Joe. Joe is running functionally both companies right now in terms of revenue. That is the danger of these shorts. I've been harping on these, and I can't say it enough how bad I think that is going to end up being for Huck. He's able to pay off a loan. The only thing that I would have liked to see Joe do differently is get some of these market shares into his treasury. I think he'd be in a much, much stronger position from these shorts if he'd been able to swing that. Regardless, he pays off a loan. This share value is getting kind of high, $90. Is Huck even going to be able to afford to close these shorts? I don't know. It's going to be quite expensive to try. We'll see what the revenue on the belt is. I think that'll make or break him in terms of closing his shorts. He's upgrading Philadelphia. Could secure a token there. That's going to be a really good token. He's going to have a very similar map presence as Joe in terms of tokens in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland. Almost identical map positions. It doesn't secure the token. It actually goes for Baltimore, so that makes sense. Probably a better revenue location. I'd missed that. He's going to have pretty good revenue here. He's going to be able to double tap Pittsburgh and run into New York through Baltimore. Is that the optimal run? I am uncertain about this. I have to imagine running into Pittsburgh twice would be better. I don't know. I haven't done the math, but 270 is nothing to sneeze at. Unfortunately for him, he only gets 60% of it. Unable to pay off any loans. PLE is up. 3 trains in this company. Gonna have really nice revenue. May just see a quick Richmond upgrade. We do. And he's running for 350, which he half pays. Looks like he's going to go back and address some of these loans. So pays off that. DLNW does have access down into Charleston, Cleveland, courtesy of the Huck player. And looks like they're trying to bypass Charleston for the late game run into Pittsburgh. And is running for 150. They half pay that and should be able to address their single loan now, which they do. J has had pretty underwhelming map presence and revenue to date, is looking to head down towards the revenue centers in the center of the map, but is going to have to wait till Brown to get there, so no guarantees for them. Running for just 120 still, and half pays again in order to clear out their loans. So very conservative play from Becky, but unfortunately is probably going to fall behind here if they don't start printing money and taking advantage of the financial levers this game has to offer. B&A going to have a massive run out of Charleston and Cleveland, and is running for 340. Not quite as much as the Pittsburgh company, but pretty darn close. So Joe is cleaning up here. Unfortunately for him, his companies are diluted. They're not 100% presidencies, but 340 and I think it was 440. Nothing to sneeze at here. If he's able to do that again in the next operating round, he may just win the game. But I think that we will see these 2 trains rust before he's allowed to run for 2 trains. We'll see. He half pays that. I guess he had to do that. He does have quite a high loan burden. And he actually takes another loan. Wow. So he's buying another 3 train. He has three trains. All right. He better hope green lasts for a while, or else he's going to be in a world of hurt when these permanent trains come up and he has no loan space. Housatonic, first payout for them. They're running a 3 train for 120, half paying and covering their interest. And last company to operate is GT. No track really for them except for Scranton, but it would be kind of expensive to lay it, and I don't know that there's really any urgency to do that. So laying a green tile and running his 2 trains for 200. Half paying again, seems to be a theme for this player. Will cover his interest and I assume pay off a loan. Yep. We're into the merger and acquisition after 2.2. Just looking at these players. I think we can safely assume that Joe is not going to be doing anything here. He has so many trains. He doesn't want to discard all these. That said, I think it's pretty safe to assume that these 2 trains are going to be rusting, so discarding them wouldn't be the end of the world. But again, I don't know that we're going to be seeing him doing all that much. Huck is first player up, and the Rutland is an underwhelming company, so could potentially merge this into the A&S. Unfortunately for him, if he were to merge those 2 companies, that would be a massive short target. So I don't know that we will see that. Could also just grow up one of his companies, but would be opening himself up to shorts if he did that. So maybe just sitting pretty for now. We already talked about Joe, Tom. Needs some loan space on the A&A. Could grow this company up. We'll expect to see, 2, 3 companies floating ahead. So the 2 trains may be rusting here. It's probably going to be looking at buying a 4 train, may need the loan space, so could see that. And then Becky, she has so many companies, it's really hard to predict what she's going to do. May want to reduce her train liability by merging some of her companies because we are expecting these 2 trains to go away. So could see some action from Becky here in the mergers and acquisitions. Huck, he is passing A&A. He's passing so far a lot of passes. And nobody did anything. So now we're in the acquisition round. So far, no action. And we're just in the stock round. So there's a lot of liability on a lot of players with these naked 2 trains that may be rusting before they can run here. I think there was some opportunities for players to address this risk, but nobody availed themselves of it. Becky's leading us off. Has enough cash to float for max here. We'll see what she elects to do. Is going to instead short the belt. Okay, so the belt is only at $70. You're not getting very much cash here. She already had enough cash to float. And Huck, I guess Huck is a interesting proposition in terms of shorts. Has the R, which could very well be falling back trainless if the 4s come out first, which is looking likely. Does have 2 3 trains, which are going to be running, but has a fair amount of loan burden already. So shorting may be reasonable. If you're going to short him, you got to make sure that these 2 trains rest. So I don't hate shorting him. He also has a huge liability in terms of these best shares. So I don't hate shorting him, but you got to make sure you really push the trains if you're going to be doing it. All right. I will note that she forgoes the opportunity to park her company first and secure a important token. So is there any tokens that are available that she should be on the lookout for? Not really. So I don't know that she lost that much by shorting instead of parring first. Could look at Albany, or, well, probably Albany would be the best for right now. Yeah. So not blown away by the available token spots. So maybe the right decision to short. This leaves us with, oh, she is actually parring. I forgot that you could buy after you're short here. So she's parring the SR, didn't lose any opportunity at all. And she's putting out on Albany. Okay, no surprise there. Looks like she does that as a 2-share company. just making it more likely that the two trains are going to rust. Joe is up, and Joe is not going to short anything. He's parring the UR, and he puts it on Cincinnati. Cincinnati kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Doesn't have great options other than Indianapolis in green, so that's a little bit underwhelming. May see him just max par for trains and then liquidate the UR, kind of an emergency buy situation in 17. Regardless, buying the UR for now. May go back for shorts later. Tom, also going to be floating the NYOW, and he's taking Indianapolis, so that's bad news for the UR. That was the one location that we thought he could reasonably get runs into, and now has been cut off. That is another 2-share company. So 3 new companies floating. I think that we can be very confident that the 4 train will be coming out before the 2 trains can run. They will have to take some loans to make it happen, but should be feasible. There's only 3 2 trains, so $750, and we have well over $800 available to these companies. Huck, unfortunately, he's in a rough spot. Needs to close his shorts, I think, but can only really afford to close 2 of them. So he is working on it. Becky going back for paying shares here, so going to be content with a single short on the belt for now. Joe, he is passing. Does have cash for shares. There's not a whole lot available to buy, but the PLE is available. Has a 3 train and a 2+, so you can expect it to be running. Tom, no money for shares. Could see him short the belt, for instance, for cash. So he's not shorting just yet, but he is selling out. Recognizes that Huck is probably not the president you want to be investing in right now, and he is going to buy his, or not his, but he will close his short on the BESS. Okay. Huck closing another short, but still, unfortunately, on the hook for 40% of this company's revenue. Becky shorting the BESS. Okay. These 2 trains are going to rust, but even that 3 train's going to be running pretty well. I think that I would prefer to short the belt rather than the BESS. I think the BESS's presidency is just a stronger position than the belt's presidency. They have similar runs, obviously, with 2 tokens in Pittsburgh, so the companies are similar, but the players' positions are different. So I think if you're going to short someone, maybe short the belt. It is $20 more on the BESS, but I don't know. She buys a PLE. Did she need the short money to buy it? She did not. So this is another example of a player shorting, but really not needing the cash for anything. So shorting is something to be done with caution. You don't want to just do it willy-nilly just to do it. If you need the cash, fine, but if you don't need the cash, this is a big liability. Joe is going back for the short on the belt and is not going to buy any shares. Tom passing, Huck passing, Becky shorting the BESS again. So it looks like the BESS is still going to be max shorted. It doesn't really have the loan space to defend itself, unfortunately. Could redeem 1 loan, and that would not be quite enough to redeem 2 shares, unfortunately. I suppose Joe could buy his own BESS treasury shares to capitalize it to defend these market shares. That would probably be a pretty good move. Give it the cash to redeem shares, and also you have the cash, so might as well buy your own shares. Joe is shorting still. Okay. So simultaneously being shorted and shorting. He buys the UR, so just going to be capitalizing his company. That company's not going to be running, so he's not going to get any revenue to cover his short interest or his short payments on the belt from that investment. Don't really like that. Tom, he's buying the BESS from the treasury, so giving it the cash to defend itself. We'll see if Joe actually avails himself of that. in theory, this presidency is actually vulnerable. We'll see if that comes to pass. Huck passing and Becky shorting the Bess. So the Bess is still the target of shorts, but this is not really an unhealthy company, and I don't think Joe is that unhealthy of a presidency. Um, he's got 3-3 trains and great map position. I think he's going to be able to overcome this and make these shorts regret this. I don't like this. Becky has $310 from all these shorts and is doing absolutely nothing with it. Hopefully we'll figure out something to do. Joe is shorting the belt still, almost max shorted there, and he buys the treasury of the Bess. Would really like to see the Bess put some of this cash into buying market shares. I'm a little bit worried about the efficiency of, recovering from these shorts. The main way to combat the shorts is to get a bunch of treasury shares so that you can pay yourself off. But he doesn't seem to be interested in doing that. Yeah, we'll see. He still has the opportunity to redeem some of these market shares. Huck passing Becky, shorting the belt. So that is now max shorted. She has a ton of shorts and a ton of cash. Still short of, I should not use the word short, still shy of 400. So for another max par. She sells a PLE and is going to be parring the ME. The ME is going in Buffalo. That is underwhelming location. She's locked down Buffalo for her two companies, but who cares? It's not a revenue location that's valuable right now. This makes it very, very likely that the 4 train is coming out, but I think that was already pretty much assured, so I don't know that this changes the game state other than putting Becky on the line for a ton of shorts. Joe's passing Tom, everybody's passing, and we're into the operating round. So very precarious situation from a lot of players here. Everybody's just kind of walking the line in terms of these shorts. Very aggressive shorting so far. SR is up, and we'll be heading over towards Buffalo, it looks like. Expect to see some 3 trains and then quickly a 4 train come out. So $600 has enough for 2 3 trains and her interest. UR has been tokened out of everywhere and links up with Charleston, going to be a very pathetic run. Buys the 3 and could buy the 4 here. Takes loans and we see the 4 come out. So is anybody left trainless here? I think there's multiple companies that are trainless. Becky has 2 companies that are trainless. Could have addressed this in the mergers and acquisitions, but neglected to. She has a ton of companies. What is that, 6 companies? She needs to really put her thinking cap on and figure out how to reduce her train liability, or else she's going bankrupt. Has a lot of options, but boy, that's a complicated portfolio. The Rutland is also trainless. This is the one that's a real problem. Huck is in a very bad situation here. Going to be falling back on one of his companies and is owing quite a lot of money to the Bess in short order. Fortunately for him, he's going to have 1 revenue payment on the ANS before this bill comes due. Still bad news. And then the ANA and the NYOW are also trainless. NYOW, no surprises, newly floated company, but the ANA out of Albany also had the opportunity to not fall back and neglected to take it. So this 4 train is really going to shake up the game for a lot of players. UR, 2 trains, and covers his interest. NYOW out of Indianapolis is not laying any track, doesn't really have too many options until Brown, and buys a 4. ME, another newly floated company, is looking to head towards Pittsburgh, it looks like. Probably hoping for a token there in Brown, but no guarantees there. That's kind of a long shot. Buys a 4. There's 5 4s left. And the Rutland now, what's he going to do? Could shuffle trains. Otherwise, going to have to liquidate this company. And if he shuffles a train, he's either going to lose a run on the ANS, which is probably game over for him, or he's going to be just making the shorts on the belt even better. Yeah, he's just damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. He doesn't have enough loans to buy a 4. Lay some track, and he's just liquidating. So that's a ton of value for Huck down the drain. All those shares that were $120 are now worth zero. At least he didn't have any loans. So it won't be bankrupting, at least yet. But that's a big hit. He's also probably going to lose that token. It's just a Detroit token, so not really that interesting. ANA. ANA also is unable to afford a train, and unfortunately for him, does have loans. So he's not only liquidating his company, but he's in a cash crisis. Um, this was the player I think that was doing a bunch of shorting. Actually, not. Okay. Well, maybe he should have shorted so he didn't have to sell shares here. And he sells the Best share. Best is a pretty good company. That's problematic. ANS is up. This is Huck's company. The only revenue he's going to have before having to pay for his shorts. He's upgrading track and running for 170. Unfortunately for him, he's going to have to at least half withhold. So that's even less revenue that he has because of his interest. So he half pays and isn't even able to pay off his loans. Yeah, he's in a death spiral. This is looking really bad for Huck. DLNW, trainless, may just want to liquidate. Buys a 3 train down from the SR, and the SR has another 3 trains, so not liquidating anything. Alternatively, could have bought both trains out of the SR and then liquidated the SR. It has some loans though, so that would be painful. The J, similar situation, buys a train out of the DLNW, and she's just shuffling trains. This is the problem. She should have merged companies in the last merger and acquisition to avoid this. Now she's going to have to do it in this merger and acquisition, but she's lost stock value. GT has a 2+, which will be rusting. Kind of a meaningless green upgrade, running for 110. Probably has to full withhold here. Half pays and is just shuffling that 3 train down the row of her companies. So she's got a lot of issues to sort out with her portfolio. It's going to have to liquidate or merge some of these companies to avoid having to do all this shuffling again. We're on to the Best. This is the company I've been kind of excited to see, and we'll see what this revenue looks like. Running for 160. Not amazing, much worse than it was the last time, but is that going to be enough to put Huck into cash crisis? Only $64 to Huck, and he now has bought a train across from the UR. So the real pain is going to come in the next operating round when he runs 2 3 trains. Paying off loans. Nobody entered cash crisis. PLE running 2 trains for now and has pretty good routes. Running for 270. Does have some loans to address. B&A. This is going to be nice revenue for Joe. This is his saving grace. The Best was kind of underwhelming, but the B&A is going to give him his revenue. Running for 360, and looks like he half pays. Will be reducing his loan burden. Actually doesn't. He had so much interest that he wasn't able, he was $5 short to reduce it even 1 loan. That's pretty rough. Maybe should have full withheld there and cut down some of his loans. Loan interest is staying stable, it looks like. So can't expect to pay any less in the next operating round, really. I guess maybe he's hoping that one of these other players pays off some loans and reduces it for him. Running a 3 train, but only able to run it as a 2 train. That's painful. Has to half pay and just services her interest. Belt is the last company up. Does have good track, but with just the 3 train, the interest is, or the revenue is going to be a little bit underwhelming, and has 0 treasury shares. So all these shorts are going to the bank, not to his own company. He is in dire straits. Runs for 170 and has to half pay, but not enough to pay off any loans, so just treading water. We're into the M&A round, and I think we've agreed that Becky really needs to clean shop here in terms of figuring out what she's doing with these trainless companies. She has companies that are operating high enough in operating order that she's going to be able to run her trains before she has to shuffle them. Maybe that's her strategy, but I really think she needs to merge or let these companies close or something. Huck, he's in a death spiral. His Rutland is going to be auctioned off here. It didn't have very good tokens. I think it was Detroit, yeah. So nothing interesting there. Tom, he's also liquidating a company, but otherwise has healthy companies. Doesn't really need to merge, and in fact cannot merge. And then Joe, he in theory could merge his BESS and BNA. He wouldn't be over the train limit, I don't believe. Train limit is still 4, but oh, actually no, it's 3. So he would have to discard, so we won't see that. He's got trains for all of his companies, may just be sitting on the status quo here. NYOW is up. And so far everybody just passing. PLE is converting. PLE does open up a lot of loans space. Could potentially pick up a second train this way. He has good routes out of Baltimore, so maybe looking for a 4 train here. With this, he's going to buy some shares in order to capitalize his company and see if anybody else helps. Looks like Huck is helping. Huck is the player that's struggling here, and the PLE is operating fairly late. It's operating after the BESS, so he may end up just selling the shares that he's buying. I don't know what this guy's doing. PLE buying tokens, and we're back into the conversion round. Looks like the GT is merging with the H, so Becky is aware of her dangers in terms of train liability and is merging the GT and the H. GT now has tokens, I guess 2 tokens in New York, so she's getting rid of one of her New York tokens with this decision. That seems maybe suboptimal. Maybe she should have merged other companies. And nobody's interested in investing in the GT. And now she has her trainless companies. She's merging the 2 trainless companies, not eliminating the need for her company to fall back, unfortunately. And nobody's interested in investing in that, obviously. Huck, and he is the final company now, is just going to pass. So we'll see the ANA being liquidated. ANA is in Albany. Reasonable to spend a few dollars for that token at least. See if anybody wants to do that. Tom probably hoping that someone will buy it in order to help him out with his loans, which he is going to be on the hook for. He doesn't have the cash to pay them right now. So looks like Huck is bidding quite heavily for it, and he really can't afford to win this. He also is going to be on the hook for a liquidation just in a moment. So probably lucky for him that Joe overbids him. And Joe does win it for 60. So does this mean that Tom still is entering a cash crisis for these loans? Yes, he does. All right. Well, a lot better than it would have been. So he just has to sell 1 share. Huck now is liquidating the Rutland. And fortunately for him, there's no loans here. The Rutland token is not that exciting, so I don't think we'll see this go for nearly as much as the ANA token went for. Becky bidding 10, up to 20. Huck bidding 30. I think Huck wants to just let this go. I don't think this token is worth any dollars, and he needs the cash pretty desperately. So he needs to, I think, be overbid here. Bidding 50 for that token in Detroit. I don't know. That doesn't seem worthwhile. Huck is overbidding. This is very bold. He's not going to get any cash from selling this token this way if he wins this, and he is really in desperate need of cash to cover his outstanding liabilities. So Huck does win it. He's taken cash out of his belt for a token that is really kind of underwhelming. Okay. There's the rest of the companies doesn't look like we'll be seeing any sales here. And we're into the operating round 3.2. NYOW is up, has a 4-train, does have a 4 run. It's not that exciting, but it is 100% of the money going to Tom, so I guess he won't turn his nose up to that. Passing Track didn't have any cash, so really couldn't have upgraded Detroit even if he wanted to, and is running for 140. He full pays that, no loans to worry about, and has a 4-train, which is going to be lasting for a while. Good news for him. Becky running a 4-train out of the ME and just laying kind of random green track. Runs for 120, no loans, so we'll be paying that out, it looks like. The SR, also Becky's company, looks like they do have some loans, so may see them half paying to pay off some loans. Running for 120 and does half pay, which is not quite enough to pay off a loan. That's bad news. Maybe should have full paid. She had enough for the interest. We'll be missing out on some money into the stock round as a result. The UR on Charleston, just upgrading for, I think, a little bit more money. Could link up with Indianapolis or even Cleveland. Yeah, so we'll be paying, actually doesn't have the cash to pay for a second track lay. That's unfortunate. Just running his 2-train. Oh, I see, takes the loan for the track. We'll have better revenue here. And actually secures a token in Toledo. Runs for 130, pays half, and will have enough to pay off a loan even after the interest. Okay, so the right move to take the loan, I think. A little bit more revenue for him. GT 2 trains will have good runs. And lays a second token so that it can get 2 runs into New York, it looks like. Running for 260. Does have a pretty full contingent of loans. So full pays, and then we'll cover their interest and pay off a loan, it looks like. DLNW may want to buy a train out of the GT, which is a little bit painful. Could also just liquidate this company. This is the 2 companies she merged earlier. It's painful to liquidate $110 shares, but maybe easier than just buying the train out of the GT. The GT's revenue is pretty attractive. Also could look to merge this to reduce her stock value in the GT in the acquisition phase, just because she's potentially a short target on that. The SR and the ME are safe currently, but she has quite high stock values and, really not the trains to back up the valuation of her companies. I'll be curious to see what she decides here. Becky still heading towards Pittsburgh and falling back, buys the 3 across from the GT, so I think she's definitely a short target in the upcoming stock round. ANS, just a single 3-train, and heading over to Chicago, it looks like. Runs for 170. This is Huck's company. Has 2 loans. Fortunately for him, does have the cash in the company to cover the interest at least. So he full withholds and looks like he's going to be paying off some loans. This is really bad for him, though, because he still has the shorts that he needs to pay for, and he's not making any revenue from his company. But he is able to cover his loans. The best, now running 2 3-trains, going to have really nice revenue again. And is running for 300. Half pays it. showing some mercy to the shorts. Needs to do this because he's got so many loans and is able to pay one off. PLE running just a 3 train. Looks like they are able to snag that token in New York that Becky opened up by merging her 2 New York companies. Good news for him. PLE is accumulating quite a run here for the late game through New York down into Raleigh. Would be really nice if he could secure a token in Pittsburgh. That would open up the map for him. May see that later on. Runs for 170. Looks like he full pays, and he has a pretty full contingent of loans available to him, so doesn't have to worry too much. But does pay one off. B&A should also have a nice revenue. Somehow he's able to run 2 3 trains in both the BESS and the B&A. I thought that he had bought one across from the B&A, but he actually has 4 3 trains. That's pretty nice revenue in green, but he's still got quite a few loans that he's got to account for here. So he's upgrading Detroit and runs his 3 trains for another $300 run, but he has no treasury shares, so he's going to have to half pay again. That is unfortunate. He needed to do a better job in the stock round of protecting his treasury and redeeming shares, I think. Pays out for 150 and is going to be able to pay off a single loan. Belt, single 3 train, and this is Huck's company, so he's going to be hopefully getting some revenue here. Runs for 170, half pays, and owes $100 in loans, so not going to be able to pay off any. He does buy a second train out of the A&S. Is he going to be looking to liquidate that? Looks like it. That may be a strategy, just to let this liquidate in the next operating round. Doesn't really help him though, because he still just has 2 3 trains, and when that 6 comes out, he's going to be bankrupt. We're into the next merger and acquisition round. I haven't been doing a very good job of predicting what's going to happen here, but we could try again. No options to merge for Tom. Could grow up the NYOW, but would make himself a pretty good short target if he does. The 4 train's not going to be rusting, but his 3 train is going to be rusting probably before it runs. So that would be a problem if he were to get heavily shorted in the stock round. Huck, I'm not going to worry too much about this player. I think he's pretty much eliminated. Becky has addressed her train liability for now, but have to assume that the 6 train is going to be coming out pretty shortly and has 3 companies with just 3 trains. All of them are available to be shorted except for the SR. So I think she's a very valid short target. And if you can push through trains, she is going to find herself in a world of hurt. And that leaves us with Joe. Joe doesn't have as many loans as he did, but still has a lot of loans left over. The BESS has been shorted already, so he doesn't have to worry about additional shorts. The B&A's stock value is low enough that probably not the most attractive short candidate, but with as many 3 trains as he has and with a full contingent of loans, I think he is still probably a valid short target. That leaves us with the NYOW, who is passing for now. And it looks like a pretty boring acquisition phase, or merger phase. Anybody doing any acquisitions? Looks like there actually is. So Huck is not liquidating. He's trying to have someone buy the A&S. The A&S has pretty good tokens, if I recall. It is in Charleston, so a good token, not tokens plural. Definitely worth paying some money for this company. 180. It might be, yeah, to the right player. If you're sitting in Pittsburgh already, so the BESS may want that token. Yeah, we could see this acquired potentially. 180 is a lot, but we'll see. It also has a loan, so maybe it won't be worthwhile. Yeah, okay. Nobody took the bait. I guess that was kind of questionable. We're into stock round 4. Joe is leading us off, and he is cash leader. He also has the second most shares and highest net worth, so leader in the clubhouse right now. But this is a little bit of a misleading picture. He's got six shorts that he needs to address, which probably puts him behind Tom uh, in reality. Tom has 100% of the NYOW, which is secure with a 4 train, and the PLE has just a 3 train, but he has a ton of loan space. He's not a short target on either company, I don't think. So he's probably the actual player in first place right now, even though Joe looks like he's ahead. Those belt shorts are a liability he needs to address. Do we think it's likely that the 6 train will come out? I think that's a tall order. I think that these 3 trains are going to run. So I think you have to assume that you got to close these shorts. The shorts are pretty cheap. So Joe's not as far behind as maybe I had worried. But he also, yeah. So maybe he's still in first. I think you do have to assume that these 3 trains are going to run and close your shorts, though. Doesn't have to do it at the start, though. Could sell something and par a new company if he wants. Looks like he will not sell. He's just parring the Rutland, and he pars it not for max and puts it on Detroit. So I think the Rutland started in Detroit and it's back in Detroit. All right. He has used all of his liquidity for that. It's not going to be able to close his shorts without selling shares. I think that might be something that he comes to regret. I don't think these 3 trains are going to rust before he has to pay for these shorts again. That said, Huck has been forced to half pay to cover his interest, so maybe the shorts are not that much of a burden. Tom, he is shorting the B&A. He's shorting Joe. If we look at Joe here, I think we did say that he was a short target, but really only if the 6 trains come out. If those 6 trains don't come out early, these shorts are going to be very expensive because he has great revenue and he's been addressing his loans. So, yeah, questionable. If you're shorting him, you really got to make sure that 6 train comes out. He is not doing anything with the money just yet. Huck is buying the BESS, so he's still working on closing his short positions. He's been working on that for 2 stock rounds now. Really coming to regret, I think, his actions in stock round 2. Becky, she is selling the B&A and working on closing shorts in the belt. So she's not confident that the 6 train is coming out, and neither am I. Joe is selling the UR, his company, in order to do what? He buys the belt. Okay. So he is working on closing his shorts. He just took a detour to float the Rutland first. Tom is shorting the B&A, so he's a believer that these 6 trains may be coming out, which seems very unlikely. And he's not going to be able to do it on his own, and it doesn't look like enough people are loading companies to really push through these trains. He has floated the NYSW, and that is going on Scranton. Okay. Scranton is a reasonable tile. I mean, especially with the expensive track already laid, you're guaranteeing yourself access into New York. So don't hate that decision. That's pretty good. Huck is passing. Becky is buying the belt. So has closed her shorts there, I believe. Yes, no more shorts in the belt. And Joe is also not interested in maintaining his shorts, so he's addressing his liability there. It's interesting to me that everybody is worried about the belt, but happy to maintain their shorts in the BESS. I guess it's just because the BESS is so much more expensive, it's just harder for them to close those shorts. The revenue should be pretty similar between those 2 companies. And it's also interesting to me that they are closing their shorts on the belt, but Tom is opening shorts on the B&A. I have to assume that Joe is a healthier presidency than Huck. So if you're shorting, I would feel like you'd want to short the belt. It is more money to short the BNA, but if you're shorting one, you might as well short both. Yeah, I don't know. He's buying the Bess, and Becky going back for the Bess as well, so closing her shorts there. Joe has successfully closed all of his shorts now, and has 10 shares to Tom's 7. So a little bit of a seesaw here. Joe is closing shorts while Tom is taking them out. We'll see who's betting right in terms of the game pace. Huck passing. Becky shorting the PLE. That's coming out of left field. PLE has great track. It's operating out of Baltimore. Has a very full contingent of loans. So this is a mistake. He's going to be able to take loans here, redeem all these shares, and have a very healthy company. I don't like this at all. And she's using this to close her shorts in the Bess. So basically trading shorts here. This is not helping her position. I think it's helping Tom. Joe shorting the GT. GT is Becky's company. I think she is a short target. I think we identified her as being a short target prior to the stock round. She has very high stock value and has, very few trains that are very likely to be resting soon. So I like shorting her much more than I like shorting the PLE. Just depends on what he does with the cash. Tom shorting the BNA. Okay. Huck. So Tom is shorting the BNA to buy his PLE. I think that's the right move. He buys it from the Treasury, though. So hopefully he'll use that cash to redeem some of these market shares. Becky buying the Bess. Actually, she has closed her short position, but has transferred her shorts to other companies. So unfortunately for her, still is on the hook for some revenue. Joe shorting the GT still. I agree with him. I think that this is a good short target. And buying the Rutland, so just getting more cash into his company. The only danger here is that if he's the only one pushing for trains, these 3 trains are going to run. Huck is passing still. Becky taking loans to protect her GT, I assume. But the damage is probably already done here in terms of Joe getting his money's worth. Joe is now passing. Tom passing. Huck has been passing for the past 17 stock actions and now decides to give up priority in order to take a loan in the belt. I don't really know why he was waiting so long for this. He does redeem his shares, so in a little bit of a better position, I guess, but still circling the drain. Becky passing has been given priority, and it looks like she'll maintain it. So I think we may see a little bit of a stall in terms of trains here. I guess that's not accurate. We're not going to see a stall, but I don't think we're going to see the 6s come out. So probably stock round 5 is where players need to be very cautious because I think we'll be seeing rusting events in operating round 5. Okay, the NYSW, newly floated company, he is neglecting to lay any track and taking loans, going to be pushing trains, it looks like. Does he want to try and buy 2 4s here? Just going to sit with just 1 for now. Pays his interest. The NYOW, not amazing track, but decent revenue because he owns 100% of the company. So running for 160, and he full pays it, no loans to worry about, just sitting pretty. The ME is up, also another 100% owned company. And I feel like Becky is just laying all these random green tracks. So continuing with that trend, running for 140, and she pays out, no loans either. The Rutland, newly floated, back in Detroit, and links up with Chicago. Does have a token and secures it in Toledo. Bad news for the NYOW, I think, who is running through there. We'll buy a 4 and not taking any loans just yet. The SR, max loans and kind of underwhelming track. Probably is going to be merged in order to start building late game runs for Becky, or probably should be, I guess. Half paying, has exactly enough to pay her interest and address one of her loans, so that's good news for her. She plays very conservatively. She is not a fan of carrying loans. Makes it a little bit easier to predict her actions. The UR is now up and running his 4 train for 150. He has some treasury shares, maybe enough to cover his loans, not quite. So he full withholds and is going to cover his interest and pay a loan down. So everybody just kind of taking a moment to catch their breath, pay off loans before the train rush really takes off and operating around 4, I think. GT has a max contingent of loans, so it's going to have to withhold here in order to pay any off because the interest is so high. Pays out 140, and oh, I see, because the treasury is full, actually is in pretty good shape. Buys a train across from the ME, and the ME is now trainless. So she's still working on consolidating her trains. Able to pay off loans because of her treasury shares. DLNW is laying green track out by Chicago and pays for 120, has a pretty full treasury, so could in theory take loans for a 4 here. Doesn't really have the routes to take advantage of extra trains though, so may just want to sit pretty. A&S, trainless. Huck tried to sell this company last time. I think just needs to let it liquidate here. Still going to be laying track and does liquidate. Probably should have arranged that to happen earlier, but I think Huck is in just a death spiral, so I'll stop focusing on that. Bess, running track out of Albany, has somehow ended up with a token in Albany. Don't really remember how that happened, but regardless, has really nice runs and only 2 loans in this company at this point, so should be able to get down to no loans pretty quickly here. He pays out 300. Huck is in cash crisis, selling shares but not yet bankrupt. And the Bess was unable to pay off a loan, it looks like. Just short. May be able to do it with the next run, though. PLE has 9 loans available. May want to take loans to buy a 4 here. Does have another operating round in which he could run his trains, get some nice revenue for himself. Runs for 170. And he's paying his interest. Does he take loans or does he pay a loan off? He pays it off, so playing it safe. The BNA was pretty heavily shorted. He was unable to redeem any of these market shares, though, so he's still in a rough position. Joe has been a pretty heavy short target all game. His Bess and now the BNA have been shorted heavily by all 3 of the other players. Didn't work out for Huck, but it seems like it's also kind of slowing Joe down. I don't know that he's been navigating this very well. Seems like he should have more treasury shares than he does. Running for 310, and he's half paying, presumably due to pay off a loan, but he's going to be $5 short again. I think he just needs to bite the bullet and full withhold to get rid of some of these loans. Belt is up 2-3 trains and has a massive amount of interest, so may have to half pay here in order to, move forward at all. Running for 310, and because of his treasury shares, he is able to half pay and cover his interest payoff alone. We're into the merger and acquisition. I think my analysis of these rounds are really slowing down our commentaries, so we may have to speed things up a little bit. Becky needs to address her portfolio still, has too many companies and too little trains. Joe, he has trains for all of his companies, has decent revenue. So could potentially merge to get a 10 share company. Would have to discard a train if he did that, but I am worried about their prospects in operating around 5 if he doesn't start reducing the number of companies he has. Huck is liquidating, and Tom, he has 4 trains, so he's a little bit safer than Joe is. Yeah, hard to predict. We'll just see what the players do. The ME is merging with the SR. This is Becky, so she's the player we identified as having too much train liability. She now is down to 3 companies, looking a little bit healthier. And the ME has tokens across the north here, so it does have runs into Pittsburgh in Brown and into New York. So a little bit healthier. And she does have trains in all of her companies, so won't be falling back. She has unfortunately given herself an absolutely massive stock price, though. So we have already expected the 6 train to come out in OR5. She needs to make sure she does not enter stock round 5 with a $330 share price. Otherwise, she is an obvious short and will be losing the game by giving other players just free cash. So that's the red flag for her. She needs to find a way to address this. ME passing, and then the NYSW is up, passing. Looks like pretty much everybody else is passing for now. Becky has passed all of her companies, so no more merges from her. And Joe, he has 2 companies left. Could potentially merge one of his companies. So he does. He merges the BESS and the R. This is the Detroit token getting merged with Pittsburgh. So he has really nice runs now. He has, when York opens up, he can run through there, run through Albany into Detroit, through Pittsburgh. He's got tokens all over the place. So really good late game potential, but he's got to make it there. And he has no permanent trains and a pretty heavy load of loans. He is reducing his train liability a little bit with this loan at least, or with this merge at least. This is now a 10-share company, so lots of short potential, but he is got the loan space to protect himself. I think he also increased the price of his share value, making it a little bit harder for Huck to eventually redeem that short. PLE is skipping. B&A, I don't think he's going to merge another of his companies. In theory, he could. That would leave him with 2 companies, both of them with a lot of trains and good routes. So maybe he will fold the UR into the B&A. That would bring his stock value back down. So maybe we will see a merge here. We'll have 2 10-share companies and with great routes. We do. Okay. So he is aware that the 6 trains are coming out and is working very nicely to reduce his train liability. He's still in the game. He's in a pretty good position, I'd say. The GT shorts are something that he needs to address, but he's got a lot of good tokens and potentially good runs. Would really like to see him get some treasury shares to combat these shorts, however. We'll see if he's able to make that happen. People are buying his treasury, capitalizing his company. Maybe he'll be able to redeem some of these shares. B&A, last company, not too many options for him. We are seeing Huck liquidated. Huck has 1 loan in this company, and he has the cash just barely to cover it, so won't be seeing a bankruptcy. The ANS, I believe, did have a token that was worthwhile in Charleston, so probably we'll be getting some help paying off that loan from other players. We'll see who values it. Bidding 10, very reasonable, up to 20. Huck buying his own tokens. I don't think he can really afford to do that. I don't think anything he does really matters, though. He's out of this game. Becky passing, Joe going up to 50, Tom 60, and Tom wins it for 60. So Tom is the PLE player and the NYOW. I think it was important for the NYOW that he get that token. Yes, he really needed that. Gives him access into Pittsburgh, so he was willing to pay for it. I think he correctly valued that token. This means that Huck only has to pay functionally 40 for that loan, so gets a little bit of a break there, but still in a terrible position. We'll see if anybody wants to sell any of their companies. Can't imagine that they do. And we are into operating on 4.2. M&E is up, and upgrading Boston doesn't really help our revenue for now, but potentially looking at tokens there later in the game. Becky does have priority, so if she's looking to token in Boston, makes sense to upgrade it now. Running for 150, half paying to pay off a loan, I assume, and it is now at 360. This is a massive liability to her. She needs to absolutely address this in the stock round somehow. Either she preemptively takes 5 loans, could potentially even convert to a 10-share company, take 10 loans in advance. I don't know. She needs to do something. Could also see her merge this company to reduce its stock value, but all of her other companies are pretty high in value as well, so she's not going to be able to cut the share price that much. Yeah, that's a huge short target, I think. NYSW running a 4 train and looking to get out of Albany down the road, but going to be stuck for now. Runs for 170, and actually was able to take a loan to escape the Albany blockade, so has a little bit of a better run. Is going to full pay and probably pay off a loan here. He does. NYOW, now with the token in Charleston, should have much better revenue than he did earlier. So running for 190, $50 more than before, or it looks like maybe just $30 more than before, but still important for the late game. He pays it out and doesn't have enough money to pay off a loan. GT 2 trains here. Should have pretty good runs, especially now that the NYSW has upgraded the track to the west for him. So he's able to run it out of New York twice for 310. That's pretty monstrous. Bad news for Joe with these shorts. Because of the Treasury, has enough money to pay off a bunch of their loans now. And does. Going to be hard to close those shorts for Joe. That's a very expensive company. But again, this is just going to my point. If Becky is trying to not be a short target, these very expensive shares are not working to her favor. Bess running 3 trains from Pittsburgh should have pretty monstrous revenue here. And actually not able to run all 3 trains from Pittsburgh, at least not efficiently. So it's going to run out of Detroit for now. Running for 460 though. And with a Treasury share, he half pays and should be able to clear his loans. I think we missed that the Bess had grown up. Oh, we didn't miss about it. We talked it. He merged with the Rutland. So he has no loans going into stock round 5 and should be pretty safe from shorts as a result, even though these 3 trains are going to be rusting. DLW, Becky's final company, just a 3 train, pretty underwhelming routes. Running for 120. She full pays, has no loans to worry about, but is taking loans and takes a full contingent of loans. And I think we are seeing this because she's worried about her stock value. She didn't do anything with the money. Didn't have enough for a 5 train, which is actually interesting. She could have taken another loan and bought the 5 train, which she desperately needs, a cheap permanent train. So I'm surprised we didn't see her take that final loan there. I think that she would have enough. Maybe she didn't have enough with the interest to afford the 5. I'm not sure. But I do think she's manipulating her stock price. PLE, passing track, and tokening in Richmond of all places. I guess just preparing for the late game. Realizes he needs to get a run west somehow and can't rely on Pittsburgh necessarily. Runs for 170, and he half pays it in order to buy a 5, it looks like. Yeah. So he's able to secure himself a 5. We're into brown, but it's so late in the stock round, or the operating round. Is that going to open up a token for anyone, or are they all exhausted their tokens? So Joe on the BNA has no tokens, and then Huck is irrelevant. So not giving away a token in Pittsburgh just yet. We'll see who ends up with that. BNA can upgrade for more revenue here, though, so that's potentially relevant. Tom may regret buying that 5 if he's paying a ton more money on these shorts. But gonna just upgrade into Atlanta for now and running for 500. That is a problem for Tom. He needs to close these shorts. Paying off loans, and we are onto the belts. He upgrades Baltimore, his home tile, running 2 trains out of there, I assume. Not yet, actually. And running for 340. He is able to half pay and will pay off a single loan. Just very slow and steady for Huck. I think he's still in a rough spot, but he is gradually paying off his loans. That will conclude the operating round, and we are into the mergers and acquisitions. Becky has to handle business here. She's got 3 companies. All of them are short targets, and she has no permanent trains. No immediately obvious way to secure a permanent train. She merges with the DLNW. Okay, so is able to cut her share price from 360 to 220. Still definitely a short target, and has 6 loans, $500 cash. So she needs to make sure that she's able to run her 3 trains. If people short her enough, she runs the risk of falling back, and these 3 trains could very well rust before they run, in which case she is in a world of trouble. If the 3 trains rust, that means all the 5s have gone, and at least one 6 is gone. So she will be on the hook for at least $750 in the ME, and could very well be stuck running a 7 and a 4 train for the rest of the game until the 8s come out and rust her 4. So she's in a very precarious position. Probably is eliminated, actually, which has been a long time coming. I don't think she's been in a strong position for most of the game, but she really needs to figure out a way to protect herself in this upcoming stock round. Huck is out. The 6 train is certainly going to come out before these 3 trains can run, and he doesn't have the cash to afford a 6 train, so he's going to go bankrupt. And then Tom and Joe are in contention for the win here. Joe, again, looks like he's ahead of Tom just because of the net worth and the share lead, but he has 40 shorts he's got to close. He probably cannot assume that these 4 train is going to rust without paying, so I think he is still motivated to close those shorts. And then Tom, he has the first permanent train. He has some shorts that he needs to address as well. So actually, maybe it's closer between Joe and Tom than I initially had thought. But at least Tom has a permanent train. So, okay. We do see the merge that we were kind of expecting. And Becky is buying a bunch of expensive shares in the ME to capitalize it. So she has accumulated a ton of cash in this company, but shorting these shares is going to be so attractive. It's going to be very hard for her to protect this stock value. And if it falls below 200, she's basically guaranteed to be falling back trainless. Nobody else is helping to capitalize. Nobody else is taking any merger actions just yet. NYSW is converting. So Tom opening up loan space in order to buy permanent trains and capitalizing his company, it looks like. NYOW passing, and we are into the acquisition phase. Don't imagine we'll be seeing anybody being acquired here. I suppose that the Morristown could have acquired one of her companies with all this cash that they have. That would have been an interesting play to try and acquire the GT. Would require her to discard shares and wouldn't address her short danger, though. So maybe not worthwhile even considering. All right, into stock round 5. I expect there to be quite a bit of action in this stock round. Becky is leading us off, and I think she may just want to go ahead and take the 6 loans up front. I think she's going to get shorted no matter what she does, so might as well reduce the amount of cash that other people can get. She doesn't have enough cash to buy any shares. She can't close her. She actually can close her short on the PLE, but no rush to do that. She can do that later. So I think she may want to just take a company action and take a bunch of loans here. Instead, going to be shorting the belt. Belt is a safe short. It's definitely going to be falling back, and Huck is probably going bankruptcy, so that's free money. But I don't know. May want to protect herself before she hurts Huck. She buys a PLE and closes her short. Okay, reasonable, reasonable. Joe shorting the belt. So maybe she figures she has time while other people short the belt first, but I have to imagine this ME is getting shorted. Joe is shorting the belt and buying the NYSW. Tom also shorting the belt. Everybody sees the writing on the wall that Huck is bankrupt. And Huck is buying the best, finally able to close his short there. He's had shorts of the best since stock round 2. We are stock round 5, which can show you the danger of being injudicious with your shorting. Becky is continuing to short the belt. There are only 5 shorts available, so there's one more left. She has to assume, I think, that she's running the risk of getting shorted on the ME here by not taking loans. Last short on the belt, and GT is being bought, so he's closing his shorts with the money from the belt. Tom, does he start shorting here? He's shorting the GT, okay. Sure, he's shorting Becky. He's just not shorting the ME just yet. I think you just short both of these companies max and let Becky deal with the fallout. That seems like free money. Huck passing, Becky taking loans on the GT, so she is aware of the danger and trying to protect herself. Unfortunately, she really can't take too many loans, and the GT is still an attractive short target. Joe is going back for the ME now, and I think we'll see Tom probably do the same. Joe is turning around and putting cash into the NYSW with that short money. Tom does short the ME, so we see 2 shorts before she's able to take loans. And he actually is able to float the first new company, the J. He puts it on Cincinnati. And I think that we can expect players just to float Storm. So I think that token spaces are a secondary consideration to just flooding the game with capital and rusting the 3 trains. But certainly, if there's a token that you want, you might as well take it early. Huck passing, Becky is taking loans on the ME. And she actually only took like 2 loans. Puts herself at 180. I think she might as well have taken the full contingent here. Yeah, she's still going to be shorted, I assume. Looks like the other players are not deterred. They said you should have taken more loans, and I agree with them. Tom is just buying the... actually, he's not buying anything. He's just shorting for now. Joe went back and bought the NYSW. Tom needs to defend that presidency. Probably doesn't want to lose that company just yet. Becky, realizing that she still needs to take loans, should have done this earlier probably, and does go ahead and just take the full contingent. So Tom and Joe got a couple extra bucks that they shouldn't have gotten. ME is redeeming shares. Okay, still has a ton of cash in the company. And Joe buying the NYSW and actually was able to steal the presidency. Didn't see that coming. Tom was caught asleep at the wheel here. That's pretty important, I feel like. NYSW is in Scranton, right? So that's an important token, and it's a lot of cash to be given away. More importantly, Joe is right ahead of Tom in priority, so Tom can't remain safely invested in the NYSW. He opens himself up to a dump if he doesn't sell these shares now. That's a pretty big change in the game state. That was pretty preventable. I'm surprised that we saw that happen. Okay, so regardless, Joe still in the presidency. Tom shorting the GT. GT is the more valuable company than the ME now that Becky has taken all of her loans. So just getting some extra cash. And Tom could fight back for the presidency of the NYSW, but Joe should be able to get 5 shares, no problem, if he wants it. So Tom is just instead going to float another company. And the R is going in Buffalo. Expect we'll see at least another company, maybe 2 companies float with more shorting. Becky is buying the GT, so just trying to clear her market. And Joe is buying a GT now. So that's interesting. He is closing the short that he had from before. Okay. He's stolen the presidency, so he doesn't feel like he needs the cash anymore. He has consumed his liquidity, so Tom could, in theory, steal the NYSW back and force Joe to sell shares. What would he sell? He would have to sell his BESS or his BNA. I can't imagine he's eager to do that. So, in theory, Tom could steal his presidency back with more shorts of the ME. Plenty of shorts left. There's only 4 shorts taken out so far. Tom is not a believer in the BESS anymore, and he's selling out. He's actually shorting, so he's just accumulating cash and probably going to be floating another company. He does, the ANS. He's managed to snag a token in Baltimore. That's pretty incredible. We've seen, 2 or 3 companies float, and they were floating out in the boondocks, and there was a token in Baltimore available. That's an oversight. I missed that too. I didn't comment on that. Floats it as a 10-share company. So we now have 3 newly floated companies and the NYSW, which is very well capitalized, operating before any of the old companies. So these 3 trains are definitely going away. Huck, passing. Becky, passing. Joe, he is going back to short the ME more. Understandable. Tom, shorting the ME. And Joe actually used that money to secure the presidency of the NYSW. So I think Tom had a potential opportunity there, but didn't want to prioritize that. Tom is buying the J, just capitalizing his companies. And Joe, continuing to short the ME, reasonable. He is not buying any shares just yet. Tom is also shorting the ME for cash and not buying anything just yet. Joe, second to last short for the ME, and he's able to go back and buy the NYSW. Tom also shorting the ME and buys the J. So just working on getting a bunch of capital into the game and is going to aggressively push trains. Becky is passing. Joe, he is shorting the GT. GT is a little bit of a less safe short in the sense that it has a 4 train, but still it's the same president and she is up against the ropes. So reasonable to max short the GT as well. He is not doing anything with the cash just yet. Tom, he is selling out of the NYSW, realizes that's not a secure company for him to be invested in. Is safe from a dump right now with 1 share in the market, and he's going to put this cash in the R. Interesting that he's not shorting the GT. There's a limited number of shorts that you can take out, and Joe may hoover those all up. So I guess he's not as confident that the GT is going to be a good short investment. Joe, passing on $200. Tom, he is now shorting the BNA. The BNA has a lot of loans that it can take still. It has a 4 train and it has pretty good map position. I think that I would favor shorting the GT over the BNA. The BNA presidency is also you're in a much stronger position than Becky is in order of raising capital and shuffling trains around. So I don't like that. I would rather short the GT than the BNA. He is going to put that cash in the R. So just very aggressively capitalizing his companies. Joe's passing. Tom shorting the BNA again. Boy. He sells an NYSW. And he was already safe from the dump, so didn't have to sell that, but maybe assumes that the NYSW is going to be withholding for trains or something. So he's going to buy the J. He's really just dead set on fully capitalizing both of his companies to push trains. Joe is buying the PLE, cheap paying shares, reasonable. Tom, he is selling fully out of the NYSW and buys another J, so owns max investment in the J. J is the company that's operating first, and it has not $1,200, but with loans could easily snap up 2 5 trains. So Tom is in a position to just buy all the cheap permanent trains. I mean, he's got 3 newly floated companies operating in a row. He's going to be able to buy all the fives and into the sixes on his own. That is extremely strong. I mean, Joe, his closest competitor, has 3 companies with no permanent trains. He's going to have to buy all these expensive permanent trains. Um, he can take loans to do it, um, but geez, I don't know if he has the routes to run, really long permanent trains. Huck passing, Becky passing, Joe passing, Tom buying. He's actually shorting the B&A, so he's going to potentially max short the B&A. That's aggressive. And he's buying his ANS, so he's just continuing to capitalize his new companies. The downside for Tom here is that he's got all these companies with random tokens. He's not going to have the routes to run his permanent trains. The exception to that, I think, is the ANS, who managed out of the blue to snag a token in Baltimore. So as a result, will actually have some decent run potential. But the Rutland and the J, they're operating kind of in no man's land out here. So he's going to have to find a way to get his trains into companies with actual routes for the trains. Joe, he's passing. Tom is the only one interested in taking action still. It looks like he's going to max short the B&A. He's actually selling out of the PLE, which is interesting because it has a permanent train and it's pretty cheap. I think he could just continue to short the B&A. I'm surprised that he sells that PLE. And he's buying the ANS. Yeah, so just going to max short the B&A. I'm surprised he sold that PLE. I would have assumed he would have just shorted the B&A 10 times and gotten the cash that way. And last short of the B&A, 10 shorts on this company. That's pretty aggressive, especially for a company that was running for 500 in the last operating room. You better be real sure that these 3 trains are going to rust. I think that's very safe to assume, but still pretty ballsy. He is selling a PLE again, so that's an insecure presidency. This is a presidency that's definitely stealable, has a 5 train, and it has great tokens. Yeah, this is an amazing opportunity for someone to steal. Joe should be selling, something and buying this PLE, stealing this presidency. He needs 5 shares. That's $225. Sell a single share in the best, and you're basically there. Yeah, that's greedy from Tom. That should not be allowed to stand. Those tokens are super valuable. Tom's continuing to capitalize his companies. Joe, he shorts a GT. Is he going back to steal this PLE? I think he already stole the NYSW. So he actually sells out of the PLE. That's crazy. Am I wrong here? Look at this. The PLE's got tokens in Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York. Those are incredible tokens. That's definitely worth stealing that company. You could shuffle that 5 train into another company, shuffle a long permanent train into there, and just run that company forever. And then you can merge it. I guess you can't. It's a 10-share company. I was going to say you could merge it and increase its stock value, but you can't. Still, that's an incredible opportunity you just passed up. I'm surprised by that. And what does he need the cash for? What is he buying here? He buys an R. Okay, so buying a company with no runs, just helping it buy more permanent trains for your opponent. That's hard to explain. I don't get that. Also, it looks like it didn't happen, but he risked giving away priority to Tom with that. Tom is selling the PLE even further. How is this possible? This company has a permanent train and excellent runs. How is nobody interested in this? Buying the ANS. And Joe shorting the GT. I'm surprised that the GT still had a short sell available. Selling the B&A and buying the R. Why is he so interested in the R? what am I missing here? The R has a token in Buffalo, and that's it. And it is a 10 share company, not going to be merged anywhere. I suppose could acquire tokens in one of his other companies. I don't know. The players are confounding me. Tom selling a J, or taking a loan in a J to manipulate operating order, still has a bunch of companies operating in a row. And Joe is passing. Actually, his GT is redeeming a share, or Becky's GT is redeeming a share. So she's just given priority randomly to Joe. This is the thing that would annoy me if I was playing this game. She had all the time in the world to do that, and now I was giving away priority. Yeah, that would drive me crazy if I was Tom. Tom's passing, and everybody passes. So as expected, the stock round was absolute chaos. Very hard for me to explain some decisions, particularly surrounding this PLE company. But the general theme of the stock round is push trains like there's no tomorrow, which was expected. So we're going to see the 6 train come out very early here, and there's going to be a world of hurt for a couple of these players. Huck probably going bankrupt. Becky probably not going bankrupt. I don't imagine that the 4 train's going to rust, but she's going to be on the hook for a 6 train, and everybody else is okay. Tom and Joe are going to be okay. Joe has a 4 train and a bunch of cash and has tons of loans to afford permanent trains. So, all right. Let's see how this plays out. I think this game comes down to Tom and Joe, and I'm not entirely sure who's going to win it. Rutland is laying an upgrade and buying 2 5s probably. Yep. Rutland, interestingly, could have upgraded in Pittsburgh and token there instead of laying this random track. So what's that about? Am I incorrect in saying that? Let's look at his track for a second. I don't want to go back too far. Yeah, so this was available to him, and he didn't do it. Instead, he's upgrading here. That helps his A&S, but his A&S is operating next, and if he really valued this track, he could have laid that with the A&S. I suppose that the A&S maybe can upgrade in Pittsburgh. Is that what's going to happen? He has shares there too. Okay, or stock tokens there too, and maybe he wants the A&S route from New York into Pittsburgh rather than the Rutland's random token. Okay, all right, more understandable. Still a little bit surprising. Buys 2 5s as expected, and he's up on the A&S. A&S upgrades Pittsburgh and snags that token. Okay, so at least the decision makes more sense to me now. He buys the 5. Could, in theory, take loans to buy 6 as well. Wouldn't even be that many loans. But it's going to pass. And NYOW, no room for loans. It's going to have to grow this company up or something. Upgrades his home. And runs for 220. He half pays to buy a 5 out of the R. Okay. I guess the R really doesn't have very exciting runs, whereas the NYOW does have a run into Pittsburgh, so I'd rather have a permanent train there. And has also covered himself in terms of liability, so if that 4 train rusts in the NYOW, he's not going to be falling back. So that makes sense. The J is up. This is Tom still. He's had 4 companies operate in a row. And did he steal the NYOW? Is that? No. Okay. He had owned that for a while. I was just making sure I didn't miss a change in presidency. The J is up and just upgrading his home. He has cash for the 6. So as expected, the 3 trains are gone, and Becky just missed out. But we never expected her to be able to run that. He is paying off loans, and Becky's running a single 4 train. We'll have a decent route for it, but is, on the hook for a permanent train still. She upgrades New York, opening that up. and runs for 220. Does have a fair amount of interest due, but because of the treasury should be fine. So she's going to pay off, it looks like 2 loans here. Okay. NYSW, this is a permanent, or not a permanent train, a pre-existing train. So where does he want to upgrade? Just his home. It should end up with a 7 here. It's the first company out of Joe. Secures a token in New York for the late game. Runs for 230 and buys a 6 from the depot. I didn't realize there were 6s still left. There's quite a few 6s. Joe is operating here again. And upgrades Philly, runs a 4 train. All his 3 trains have rusted, but he's still got a revenue of 260. No loans, so may want to take some loans to buy a 6. And we do see the 6 come out. ME, I think they're going to end up with the last 6 train. So she caught a break and didn't have to fall on the 7, but still bad news for her. This was heavily shorted, of course. So good news for Tom in the sense that he's not going to have to pay any revenue just yet because he's not really run on any of his companies except for the NYOW. So probably pretty cash tight right now. Yeah, very cash tight. He's going to be in a cash crisis. He's going to have to sell shares in some of his companies when these later companies operate that he shorted. But not yet. The MNE upgrading Detroit, opening up a token and snags it. Buys a 4 train for the GT. So that company's going to be falling back now. And is it going to buy a 6? Paying interest and paying off loans. So what is the plan here? I guess just trying to hurt the shorts by paying off loans. She's still operating after the GT. So just going to be falling back and not hurting her shorts. I don't know. Also lost the ability to buy a 6 here. Yeah, someone's floundering, I think. It's either the commentator or the player. One of us is floundering because that's hard to explain. Belt, trainless, and I suppose didn't buy the 6 here from Becky in order to try and prevent a bankruptcy, but I think Huck is bankrupt even if he gets the 6. Yeah, so that's not the case. And also bankruptcy wouldn't have ended the game, so it doesn't matter if he bankrupts. Okay. So Belt is liquidating. Huck is out of the game. B&A, heavily shorted by Tom. This is where Tom will have a cash crisis, it looks like. Fortunately for him, the B&A has no treasury shares, so may have to half pay in order to cover his interest. Upgrading Charleston and running for 240. Tom is in a cash crisis and has to sell 2 shares. That's painful. And the B&A is able to cover his loan interest. PLE, Tom's company, probably wishes that he had been able to operate before the B&A with this company. And if he hadn't sold out, if he had protected this company, would it have been possible for him to operate ahead of the B&A? It looks like it. So it's interesting. Because if he had had the payout from the PLE, he may not have had to sell shares there. Runs for 300. And he full withholds. And is going to be able to address his loans this way. Just pays off 1 though. He should buy another company, another train into this company and run 2 trains. He's got pretty good tokens. But doesn't look like he's doing it for now. We are into the mergers and acquisitions. And Becky is in a world of hurt. She can't merge her company, can grow the GT up for more loan space, may need to do that in order to afford a permanent train. Huck is bankrupt shortly. Tom has all the permanent trains he could possibly want. And his problem is that he doesn't have good routes for these trains, so he may need to acquire some of these companies into other companies to combine tokens and get better routes for himself. And then Joe, he's got 2 permanent trains and has a major liability in the BNA. BNA has pretty good tokens, so probably doesn't want to just let that train rust and then liquidate. He's going to have to find a way to address this. All right, what is Becky up to? She's passing NYOW. It looks like everybody passed. And then we're on to the liquidation of the belt. The belt, I think, has at least one good token in Baltimore, so Worth, and in Pittsburgh, actually a ton of good tokens. Okay, so we will see a little bit of a bidding war for this, I'm sure, but I don't think it'll be enough to keep Huck in the game, because Huck has $300 in loans he's got to cover, and only $31. So this would have to go for a lot for him not to bankrupt. Bidding for 10. Becky's passing at only 30. Probably worth it to bid this up a little bit more. Joe's bidding for 40. This game's between Joe and Tom, so we'll see who ends up with this. Going to 70, 80. Going pretty high, actually. And it looks like Tom wins it for 130. Tom does need those tokens for his companies. He's the player we said didn't have routes, so this is a big deal. Joe maybe needed to prioritize bidding that up more, because he's allowing Tom to open up the map for one of his companies. These tokens are key. You know, for instance, the J, well, maybe the J is a bad example, but for instance, the R now can run into New York. That's a big deal. Okay. So Tom takes it into the J, and let's look at that route. We were saying that J was a bad example, but I guess the J has a token in Cleveland that I missed. So now he's got a great route in the J. Yeah, so that really rehabilitates his companies. All right. Huck is bankrupt, as expected, and we are into the rest of the acquisition round. PLE is in acquisitions. So maybe this is what Tom's strategy was. He was just not interested in being the president and wanting to acquire these tokens. But it was super risky the way he did it, I think. Somebody could have stolen his presidency from him very easily. Okay, so he's in acquisitions, and I think he really needs to defend these tokens. This is clever, actually. So I was saying that he didn't have good routes for his companies, but he's managed to acquire Huck's company, and now he's probably going to acquire his PLE into another company, potentially into the R or one of his other companies. The ANS, for instance, is an option. And now he's developing a lot of routes for himself. He's combining his trains into single companies. So this is well done. I think that he was risky for the PLE to, sell down to just a 3-share presidency, but it's going to work out for him as long as he ends up with this acquisition. Becky's passing out again. It's coming down to Tom and Joe, and Tom wins it for just 50. That is a very cheap acquisition. I'm very surprised that Joe is allowing this to happen. I mean, just look at these tokens. New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore. That is, that's $150 of tokens, 3 tokens, going for $50. That's ignoring, the impact on the game in terms of developing your routes. That's a steal. So he gets that into the ANS. The ANS now has 2 trains and really wonderful routes. Yeah. He can run into New York twice with the ANS. And then when ANS opens up, he's going to have a token in New York that he can run out of too. All right. So Tom has gotten 2 really big wins in this mergers and acquisition round. I think he may be the favorite to win. Maybe he was the favorite to win before this as well, but he's in really good shape. Huck, bankrupt. Tom, passing. And it looks like Joe is acquiring his heavily shorted BNA. So this is how he's going to address his train liability. and he acquires it for just $10. That's interesting. Doesn't have any loans. Hmm. And he acquires it for just $10. I'm surprised that Joe let that happen, or Tom let that happen. Could have bid that up a little bit. Okay. On to Becky's company. Doesn't look like there's anything else going on. GT is being offered up. But this is a Hail Mary from Becky. I don't think anybody's going to buy this for $1,000. And actually, she acquires it herself. Okay. So that's how she's addressing her train liability. She had 2 companies, now she just has 1. She's combined her tokens. Still doesn't have a permanent train, but has loan space to pick one up. Could pick up a 7. So may see that happen. Paying off her loans and hurting the shorts quite a bit. They have to cash out a fair amount of money here by closing their shorts prematurely before they were ready, probably. Tom, for instance, is in a cash crisis and has to sell a bunch of shares. All right, we're into operating round 5.2, and there's been significant changes in the game state since we last were in the operating round. Becky's down to a single company, has 6 loans, which is not quite enough to buy a permanent train, but with this treasury share paying out and then taking loans, she should be able to pick up a 7. Tom has good routes, has short trains, but has a lot of them, so he's in a good position. And Joe has enough permanent trains for his companies as well. So everybody's covered. It's close in terms of net worth, but Tom is ahead in shares. And Tom and Joe are equally invested in the shorts and the ME. So that will be hurting them equally. I think Becky's eliminated. So it's going to come down to these 2 players, and I think it's reasonably close. Tom has twice the net worth, and he's already ahead in shares. So I guess we got to favor Tom here. They both have good routes. NYSW, his route is split, so he's got to find a way to link up his route probably. And the best has great routes. They've been around the whole game. So both of them have good routes and reasonable trains. But I think that Tom is probably just far enough ahead already that he's going to take this win. NYOW will move through this rather quickly, I think. Random green upgrades, probably looking to bypass Detroit down the road, running for 390. Just 1 loan, so doesn't really have to worry about interest. Tom on the R is upgrading his home and secures the token in Baltimore. So he's set. His 2 companies are the AS and J. And he's got Baltimore locked down, so that's good. Running for just 280, that's pretty underwhelming. Maybe he wants to get a second permanent train in this company. Not in any rush right now. The J, Tom's other company, completes that bypass, or that track that he was building before. He was looking to bypass Toledo, not Detroit, it looks like. And the J is able to token in New York even. Runs for 360. And not doing anything with trains yet. A&S, 2 trains in this company, should have a pretty monstrous run. He's heading over towards Boston, secures a token there, and runs for 530. Very healthy treasury. Should be able to pay off some loans here. Yep. And then the ME, no permanent train for them, but it is heavily shorted, so it's going to be painful for these other players. Running for just 250, and looks like Joe is in a cash crisis still. So that hurts him. That's the other differentiation between those two players' positions in the game is that Tom was able to run all of his companies before having to pay for his shorts, so he doesn't have to sell any shares, whereas Joe is going to fall even further behind with a sale here. ME is able to pay their interest and pay off a bunch of their loans, but I think they need to pick up a permanent train here. Prioritizing the loans again. That's been a common theme for Becky throughout the game. NYSW, good routes and good trains. He's able to link into the offboard even through New York. And running for 570, but has to pay half to cover his loans. Also paying off loans here. Bess is running 2 trains for 600. Also has a lot of loans, so may even see a half pay or full withhold here. Yeah, half pays, and then we'll pay off, work on paying off some loans. And we're into the mergers and acquisitions. At this point, I don't think there's anything that's going to be merged, so I think we can just kind of skip through here. Nothing merged, and the ME is again being put up, but I don't think anybody's going to be buying this. Joe and Tom pass, and the other companies are quite expensive, and everybody's passing. We're into the stock round. The A train has not been bought, so unfortunately we will have another stock round here. At this point, I don't think floating new companies is a priority. All the good tokens are taken. There's no really train rush at this point. So I think you just got to optimize your portfolio, which we should be able to go through this pretty quickly. Tom and Joe, neck and neck in terms of shares, 7 and 9. Both of them with some shorts they need to address in the ME, which will be quite expensive. But both should be able to handle it. And Tom is twice the net worth of Joe. So I think Tom is going to win this game, but let's see how they close their shorts. So instead of closing a short, Joe is going straight to the ANS. ANS is going to have really good revenue, so reasonable to buy it, especially from the market. You're not giving it any cash. Tom buying the M&E to close his short. Becky buying the Bess with 2 trains, reasonable to buy that. Joe is making a beeline for the ANS. In theory, could steal the presidency, but it's very, very expensive. So I don't think Tom's too worried about that. Tom buys the Bess as well, taking a detour for paying shares, not closing his shorts just yet. Becky buying the Bess. Joe selling the R and making a beeline still for the ANS. All right. Tom buys an M&E, so closing his shorts. Becky buys the Bess. Joe shorting the R. That's wild. Permanent train, good routes. This is definitely going to be an expensive short. Very easy for him to redeem all these shares. And he buys the ANS. Okay. Tom is equal in shares for the ANS, so needs to buy that here to protect that presidency. Has the cash to do it, no problem. And buys the Bess. Okay, so he is losing 2 permanent trains, $600, and pretty incredible tokens here. That is hard to explain. I mean, surely buying the ANS is better than buying the Bess there. The Bess 4 train is guaranteed to rust. Like, the game does not end until that 4 train rusts. So even though its revenue is, in theory, marginally higher than the ANS's stock appreciation is much better too. That's crazy. So unless Joe has mercy, Tom is going to lose the presidency here. Becky buys 1 share in the ANS as well. And Joe, yeah, of course, shorts the R and buys the ANS. So he's stolen the presidency. I will say that he's had to short in order to do this. So it's not, cost-free. He's hurting himself to buy this presidency. But boy, losing control of that company is crazy, especially because it would have cost Tom nothing to do it, to save it. That is wild. Is that enough to change the game? I don't know, but that's bad. Tom is ahead, but I don't know if he's far enough ahead to be giving away 2 permanent trains. Tom closing his shorts still. Becky buying at NYSW. Joe shorting the ME. So this is the difference between these two players, is that Joe is continuing to take on shorts and Tom is closing his shorts. I think the gap between these two players is widening, with the exception of losing the presidency of the ANS. I think that part is inexcusable. Joe buys the J. Okay. Becky taking loans on the M&E. So that's frustrating for Tom, I assume, having paid a bunch of money for all these shorts. Now the company's getting cheaper, and she's taking a ton of loans. Oh yeah, Tom must be really upset about that. He paid $200 for each of those shares, and now they're only worth $110, and still dropping. Wow. So he paid twice what he would have paid if he had waited, but that's hard to predict. I mean, I don't know that you really could have anticipated her doing that. Joe, he is shorting the ME still and can't buy anything now that it's so cheap. Tom sells the best, and is he going to just close shorts on the ME still? Looks like it. So at least getting some value from these cheaper shares. Becky passing. Joe shorting the ME again, almost max shorted, and he buys a J. At least that presidency is secure. Jeez, I still can't believe Tom lost the ANS. Tom passing. Becky buying the best. Joe max shorted the ME and not doing anything with the money. And now shorts the R. That's crazy. He's taking on so many shorts. This R is going to pay. And he buys the J. Okay. The J and the R both have good routes. It's not like they are locked in Buffalo anymore. I mean, the R is getting into New York. Potentially can bypass Detroit down the road with more track. Yeah, these shorts are something else. The R is taking loans now, presumably to redeem market shares. Okay, so minimizing the amount of money that Joe's going to get. And then R has redeemed a bunch of shares. Joe continuing to short the R, but where is he putting this cash? Each share he shorts in the R is going to be only half a share of these better companies. That's very expensive. Continuing to short the R and buying the J. So he has to short the R twice, which is going to have good revenue for a single share in the J. Seems pretty easy for Tom to buy a share or buy trains out of the J and just run the R like crazy. Tom is selling the ANS. Is he going to buy the R if he's assuming he's going to have to run this company? He is buying the J. Okay. Becky selling the ANS and buying the R. Please tell me Tom doesn't lose another company. He needs to defend that presidency if she pushes. Joe continuing to short. Tom passing. Becky buying the R. Oh God, is he going to lose another company? Joe shorting the R, buys an ANS. Becky is selling the NYSW and buying the R. I'm having flashbacks. Are we going to see the R get stolen? Joe is shorting the R, and Tom is selling the best for the R. Okay, so he is willing to defend this presidency. Becky turns around and buys the best. She's happy to pick up paying shares. And Joe is just on a short rampage. He has max shorted the ME, and he's going to max short the R too. This is going to be super expensive. I can't imagine that this works out for him. This is desperation, I think. Becky selling the best that she just bought and continuing to pressure the R. Okay, so a short detour there. Joe has now max shorted the R and he's buying the Bess. Tom sells one of his J's and secures the R. So he won't lose two presidencies. He's learned his lesson. Becky passing Joe, buying the share that was sold from the J, split presidency there. And he has given Tom priority, it looks like. Okay. So Tom has priority. None of the investments of the other players are safe in his companies. He can dump the J train list if he wants. Not that that's a good idea, but it is an unsafe investment. I think the big upset here is this A&S. Losing that is crazy to me. We have 2 sevens left, and the J can buy one. The A&S is train locked, and all this cash is locked up there. So I don't know who's going to push trains here, but if nobody buys an 8, the game is going to go long. I mean, we can call it before then, but hopefully we see an 8 come out. The J, looking to, I suppose, get a second run into Pittsburgh. Looks like he's paying out, and we'll be buying a 7. So there's a 6 and a 7, going to have monstrous revenue, but it's between Tom and Joe, and they're splitting this presidency. So this presidency is not going to be the deal breaker. What's going to be the deal breaker is all the shorts that Joe is going to have to pay very shortly. NYOW, 2 trains, 100% owned by Tom, and has not amazing, but adequate routes to make it worthwhile. So running for 430. Nothing to sneeze at when you get 100% of it. Does have a loan, but doesn't need to worry about it just yet. So he just pays the interest. A&S, believe he's train locked, but is able to upgrade New York. And is even tokening in Blacksburg. Runs for 690. Crazy. Can't believe this presidency was abandoned. Paying off loans. The NYSW also train locked, and upgrading Boston, running for 650. Bess. So Joe has had 3 companies operate in a row, and it's a good thing he does because he's going to need all that cash for these shorts that he's maxed out on. Bess upgrading Pittsburgh into gray, and running for 730, but that 4 train should not last much longer. He is half paying to pay off his loans and succeeds in doing so. The R is up, just a single 5 train, but when you owe 100% of this revenue, it's significant. So upgrades Baltimore and should be able to run from New York into Pittsburgh with no real trouble. So he's running actually into Detroit for now and runs for 320, which I assume is just going to full pay for the rest of the game. Yeah. So he double jumps, and Joe is on the hook for 320. The revenue of the AS and the Bess are a lot less good when you realize you're paying half of that to your competitor. Rutland paying off some loans, and the ME also heavily shorted, but this player may actually have to do something instead of full pay because they have a ton of loans. Upgrading Detroit, running for 320, and they full pay. Bad news for Joe. With such a healthy treasury, I guess they're not too worried. This is crazy, though. So they bought a 4 train, but we know the game doesn't end until an 8 train comes out. So that 4 train is guaranteed to rust. This is like an 1830 move. You buy a train off the market, hoping that the bank breaks before it rusts, but that's not going to happen here. So this is a bad move. A is able to pay off a loan, and we are into the mergers and acquisitions. I don't think anything is going to happen here. looks like very fast, so we're into 6.2. And if a 8 train doesn't come out here, we are going to be looking at an extended game. Looks like there were some 7 trains that were bought. Oh, they exported, of course. Um, so at least that will allow an 8 train to come out on the J. He just has to take max loans. Okay. So upgrading Blacksburg to open up the token, and he runs his 6 train for 440. Or 500. He withholds it, and we'll be buying the 8. Okay, so he's having mercy on us and the viewers and putting this game to rest. Buys the 8 and has to pay some interest. NYOW, running just a 5 train. Runs it for 270 and pays it. He actually half pays, so we'll cover his loan. But he's been able to take a 2-share company all the way to 270, and he's been getting 100% of the revenue for most of this game. So if he had better tokens, he could even potentially buy a better train into this company and really run it well. I suppose he could try acquiring one of his other companies. The problem is that if he puts it up for acquisition, he could have it stolen out from under him. The ability to bid with his companies can be very low. What he could try and do is buy this 5 train out of the company to give it a bunch of cash so it can acquire for more. But that might be transparent. The other players could potentially prepare for that and still steal the company. But that would be a real classy move, is to get better tokens in the NYOW and then run really nice trains. ANS running his 5 trains still. Running for 770, and I assume he just pays this. Yep. Bess running a 6 train, and running for 450, pays it out. NYSW running for 430, pays it. The R with 2 permanent trains still doesn't have the best runs. Doesn't have a lot of cash either, so not going to be able to upgrade too heavily. So running for just 510, but again, that's bad news for Joe. He's able to pay off a loan, actually pay us off several loans, and that's going to be very expensive for Joe to close his shorts. M&E trainless because those 8 trains came out, as were guaranteed to happen. I don't know why Becky bought that 4 train. And taking some loans and actually liquidates. Geez. All right. Well, that's a gift for Joe. So his shorts are out of commission there now, at least. Good news for him. Yeah, buying that 4 train was crazy. She could have easily afforded an 8 train if she hadn't done that. So Becky's out of the game, but we knew that. And looking at this, Tom is starting to run away with it. Those shorts are going to be too much for Joe to overcome. So even losing the ANS is not going to be enough. The M&E tokens are up for grabs. And you know who would like that? The Rutland. He's desperately wanting those tokens. He's got 2 trains, and with those tokens, he's going to run super, super well. So let's see if he's willing to bid for it. Joe bids 10. Tom 20. I mean, this token should go for however much they can afford at this point. I don't know why they're messing around with bidding in $10 increments. They bid just 100, and Tom acquires it, so he should be taking this into the Rutland, which he does. And we are into the stock round. At this point, I don't think there's any life left in this game. There's no dumps. No sense in starting new companies, and everybody should just be buying up to their cert limit. And by everybody, I mean Tom and Joe. Joe is almost there. He'll have to close shorts on the R, or the Rutland, which is not going to net him any cash, obviously. Becky is long out of contention, so Tom has won this game. Let's skip to the end of the stock round and just make sure that things are looking as expected. Joe did close his shorts, but that reveals a 7 share deficit, and he's already over $1,000 behind. His competitor is going to have massive advantage in terms of revenue, and Joe is not really invested in any of his companies. So Tom has won this game, and I think that we can skip to the spreadsheet here and just confirm, yeah, he's running for $1,500 more. There's no opportunities in the mergers and acquisitions for anything, so let's skip to the end of the game. And Tom takes this for a $6,000 lead. Joe played pretty well, but I think that those shorts at the end were ill-advised. Maybe he didn't have any other options. It was nice for him to be able to steal the A and S, but the shorts were way too expensive to make that worthwhile. Well played to Tom. And Becky, I think, was just a little bit too conservative, really was unwilling to, leverage her liquidity by maximizing loans, was just being too conscientious of a president and paying off her loans too much to really get a foot in the door. And also just from the beginning of the game had kind of tokens in weird places and just didn't have a lot of presence in the game. Huck, he shorted things just too aggressively too early and was never able to recover from that and went bankrupt. So no surprises there. I am curious, if we look back at the auction, where Tom and Joe ended up. We had a very extreme outcome from the auction, with one player ending up with almost all the privates and Becky having, I believe, no privates. So obviously that strategy didn't work out for Becky, but the player with all the privates, was that Joe or Tom? Let's see here. It was Joe. So Tom actually took a middle of the road approach and ended up winning the game. Joe did okay with all these privates and ran the Pittsburgh company pretty well, but the extreme player, Becky, really didn't work out. And then Huck also took a middle of the road approach and ended up going bankrupt. But I think that was unrelated to his auction. That was related to the shorting he did early. So regardless, congratulations to Tom. Well played. This was a good game of 17. A lot of financial shenanigans on display here. I don't think that this was a particularly high-skilled game, but it's good to see, newer players or, mediocre players pull levers and run into problems. And I think it's very educational for, myself and hopefully the viewers. So thanks for watching. Track Talk will be back in the future with additional commentary.